The grandfather clock in the great hall struck 4 in the morning. Each chime echoed through the vaulted ceiling like a death knell, bouncing off empty wooden chairs arranged in neat rows like soldiers standing at attention for a commander who would never return. Alpha Matthias Blackclaw, 34 years old, and already feeling the weight of leadership crushing his spine, sat alone in the darkness counting his failures. 63 empty chairs. 63 families who had abandoned Stonehaven Pack in the 5 years since his predecessor died and thrust the alpha mantle onto shoulders far too young and unwilling to bear it. Matthias knew every single name, every face, every whispered reason they had given for leaving. The Hendersons moved to Seattle for their daughter's college education. The Ramirez family cited better job opportunities in Denver. The Yates clan said nothing at all, just disappeared one Thursday morning, leaving only forwarded addresses and the bitter taste of abandonment. But Matthias knew the truth. They were not seeking opportunities. They were fleeing, running from a pack that was bleeding out slowly, inexorably, under leadership that could not stop the hemorrhaging no matter how hard he tried. He rubbed absently at the scar on his left temple, a permanent souvenir from an IED blast in Kandahar 8 years ago when he was 26 and still believed himself invincible. The Marine Corps had taught him how to lead soldiers in combat, how to make life and death decisions under fire, how to bring most of his men home alive from places designed to kill them. But nobody had taught him how to lead civilians in peacetime politics. Nobody had prepared him for council meetings that felt more dangerous than firefights, for bureaucratic warfare where the weapons were budgets and bylaws instead of bullets. War had been simpler. Clear objectives, defined enemies, win or lose, live or die, black and white. Pack politics was nothing but gray areas and uncomfortable compromises, and watching good people suffer because you could not fix systemic rot fast enough to save them all. He stared at the stack of papers on the mahogany table before him. 12 applications, 12 glossy portfolios representing highborn females from allied packs, each one offering political marriage in exchange for bloodline alliances and territorial agreements. The photographs were professionally taken, the pedigrees read like prize breeding documents for show dogs. Lady Victoria Ashwood of the Northcrest Pack, age 26, specializes in diplomatic relations, speaks 4 languages fluently, trained in classical dance and ceremonial protocol. Miss Chen Brightmoon of the Silverpine Pack, age 29, decorated elite warrior with 15 confirmed rogue kills, holds a bachelor's degree in pack economics and resource management. They were qualified, impressively so, accomplished, beautiful, everything a Luna should be on paper. And they were absolutely fundamentally wrong for what Stonehaven actually needed. Matthias picked up the entire stack with both hands and walked deliberately toward the massive stone fireplace that dominated the north wall of the great hall. The embers from last night's fire still glowed faintly orange beneath a layer of ash, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. He did not hesitate, did not second-guess himself. He simply threw all 12 applications directly into the flames and stood watching as fire consumed them. The expensive paper curled and blackened. The professionally printed text bubbled and melted. Lady Victoria's perfect smile disappeared into smoke and ash. Miss Chen's impressive credentials turned to cinders. Matthias felt nothing except a grim, savage satisfaction that at least he could still make one decision without consulting a committee of elderly wolves who had forgotten what it truly meant to fight for something real. The heavy oak door creaked open behind him. Deputy Marcus Webb stepped inside, his boots leaving wet tracks across the polished hardwood floor. Marcus was 31, former Army Ranger with 2 Bronze Stars and a Purple Heart, and the only wolf in the entire pack who truly understood why Matthias sometimes needed to sit alone in the dark at 4 in the morning, making decisions that would inevitably get him crucified by the council come sunrise. Marcus carried 2 cups of black coffee, steam rising in lazy spirals. He set 1 cup on the table within Matthias's reach and took a seat 3 chairs down the line. Close enough for conversation, far enough to respect the space that grief and frustration required. He sipped his coffee and waited. Patient, understanding. A good second-in-command knew when to speak and when silence served better. Matthias spoke first. His voice was rough from disuse, the vocal cords of a man who spent more time arguing with ghosts than conversing with the living. I burned them. Marcus nodded once, no surprise in his expression. I figured you would eventually. Council's going to absolutely lose their collective minds when they find out. Let them. They will invoke the forfeiture law. You know they will. Elder Thompson's been circling like a vulture for weeks, just waiting for you to give him the excuse he needs. Matthias picked up his coffee. It was too hot and far too bitter, exactly the way Rebecca used to make it before the cancer took her 8 years ago. Marcus still remembered. Small kindnesses from a friend who understood that some days you needed your coffee to taste like punishment for still being alive when better people were dead. I did not survive 3 tours in the sandbox to come home and play matchmaker for a bunch of politicians wearing fur coats, Matthias said quietly. Those applications are not just insults to me, they are insults to what a Luna is supposed to actually be. Marcus leaned back in his chair. The old wood creaked protestingly under his weight. Outside, the rain that had been falling steadily for 3 days intensified, hammering against the windows like small-caliber rounds hitting metal. Thunder rolled across the Montana sky, low and ominous, the sound of nature preparing for war. You loved her, Marcus said quietly, carefully. Rebecca, that is why you cannot do this. You are still in love with a dead woman. Matthias stared into his coffee cup like it held answers instead of just caffeine and regret. Rebecca Chen, 5 feet 2 inches of pure, stubborn compassion. V, a hospital nurse who had seen past the broken Marine with PTSD nightmares and a drinking problem to the man underneath who was desperately trying not to drown. She was not Wolf, just fully human, which meant the pack elders had opposed their marriage from day one with every political weapon in their arsenal. She chose him anyway. Chose the damaged goods, the walking wounded, the man who woke up screaming 3 nights a week from dreams soaked in blood and sand. She loved him, and he loved her, and when the ovarian cancer came fast and vicious, she made him promise not to waste his life grieving. He broke that promise every single day. She was my partner, Matthias said. The words came out harder than intended. Real partnership built on mutual choice and daily commitment. Not some political transaction where I trade my title for a territorial alliance and we both pretend destiny made it happen. These highborn females do not want me. They want the position. There is a fundamental difference. And if you do not choose one of them, the pack dies. You understand that, right? We are down to 200 wolves total. Our territory is too big for our numbers. Redstone and Silverpine have been testing our borders for months. One more bad winter, one more failed harvest season, and we will not have enough able bodies to defend what is ours. You need a Luna, not for romance, for survival. Or, Matthias knew Marcus was right. His deputy had a particular gift for cutting through emotional fog to reach tactical reality. It was what made him an excellent ranger and an even better second-in-command. But knowing something was strategically necessary did not make it any easier to swallow the bitter pill. The door burst open again with considerably less courtesy. This time it was Elder Richard Thompson, 70 years old and wealthy from 3 generations of successful cattle ranching that had made him one of the most influential voices on the council. He wore an expensive tailored suit despite the ungodly early hour, every silver hair perfectly in place like he had been awake for hours planning this confrontation. Behind him came 3 other council members in similar states of prepared outrage. They filed into the Great Hall like a military tribunal arriving to pass judgment on a war criminal. Thompson did not bother with pleasantries or protocol. He simply pointed at the fireplace, where ash still drifted lazily upward. "Where are the applications, Blackclaw?" Matthias gestured toward the flames with casual indifference. "I made my decision." Thompson's face flushed an alarming shade of red that suggested dangerously high blood pressure. "You arrogant, short-sighted fool. Do you have any idea what you have just done? Those were carefully vetted candidates from our strongest allied packs. Lady Victoria's father controls the northern trade routes that we depend on for winter supplies. Miss Chen's pack maintains the best warrior training program in 3 states. You just declared war on our entire political support network. I rejected bribes disguised as marriage proposals," Matthias corrected calmly. "There is a difference. You violated sacred pack law." Elder Yates stepped forward, mid-70s, moving with the careful deliberation of a man whose joints no longer cooperated the way they once did. His voice carried the weight of decades. "An alpha who assumes leadership must take a Luna within 1 year of ascending to the position or forfeit his right to rule. Your predecessor died 6 months ago. You accepted the role, which means you have exactly 6 months remaining. Today, you just systematically destroyed your most viable options for fulfilling that requirement." Matthias stood smoothly. The movement was deliberately fluid despite old injuries, controlled aggression designed to remind everyone present that he might be young for an alpha, but he was far from defenseless. At 6'3", with the build of someone who still ran 5 miles and did 200 push-ups every single morning, he could be genuinely imposing when the situation demanded it. "Then I step down," Matthias said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Effective immediately. Find another sucker willing to play politics while this pack falls apart around him. I am done." The silence that followed was absolute and suffocating. Even the rain seemed to pause, nature itself holding its breath. Marcus closed his eyes slowly, painfully. Thompson's face went from angry red to shocked white in the span of a single heartbeat. Councilwoman Rodriguez spoke for the first time. She was 48, sharp as broken glass, a political survivor who had outlasted 3 different alpha regimes through a combination of strategic brilliance and calculated ruthlessness. If you abdicate the alpha position, PAC territory automatically reverts to federal jurisdiction under the Supernatural Territories Act of 2019, Section 47, subsection C. Any PAC that fails to maintain continuous alpha leadership for more than 90 consecutive days is legally classified as dissolved. The Department of Interior seizes the land. Remaining PAC members are relocated to designated federal reserves. She paused deliberately, letting the words sink in like poison. Essentially government-run reservations for supernatural beings. We lose everything our grandfathers and great-grandfathers fought and died to build. The territory, the autonomy, the heritage, all of it gone because you were too stubborn to accept a political marriage. Matthias felt the trap close around him like a steel snare, jaws snapping shut on his ankle. His predecessor, Alpha Daniel Reeves, the man who had saved Matthias's life when he came back from Iraq, broken and actively suicidal, had known about this law. Had known Matthias was too fundamentally honorable to abandon the pack once he understood the true stakes. Had manipulated him into accepting the alpha role on his deathbed with full knowledge of what it would cost. It was betrayal born of desperate love and genuine fear for the pack's survival, and Matthias could not even properly hate the old man for it because he understood the impossible position completely. Marcus stood and moved deliberately to Matthias's side, solid, present, unwavering. The way he had stood beside him in Mosul when their convoy got ambushed by insurgents and turned a routine patrol into a 3-hour running firefight through streets that smelled like cordite and death. "There is another option," Marcus said quietly but clearly. "Ancient pack law, trial by selection. You open applications to any unmated female wolf within the territory limits. No bloodline requirements whatsoever, no class restrictions, no status checks. You personally design the challenges based on what the pack actually needs right now. Warrior skills, healing abilities, strategic thinking, whatever we are genuinely missing. Whoever wins the trials earns the Luna title through demonstrated merit, not hereditary politics." Thompson laughed. It was an ugly sound, sharp and cruel and filled with contempt. "You are suggesting we let Omegas compete for the Luna title. Common laborers, kitchen servants, women with no training, no education, no proper breeding. I am suggesting we find someone who can actually help this pack survive, instead of treating the Luna position like a commodity to be traded on the political stock market," Marcus said. His voice never rose above conversational volume, but there was steel underneath, forged in the same fires that had tempered Matthias. The kind of quiet, absolute authority that came from leading men through literal hell and bringing most of them home alive. Or would you prefer to explain to 200 wolves why they are being dissolved and relocated because the council insisted on maintaining failed traditions? Matthias looked at each council member in turn. Thompson was already calculating angles, searching for ways to exploit this development for maximum political advantage. Yates looked genuinely thoughtful, stroking his chin with arthritic fingers. Rodriguez remained completely unreadable, her face a professional mask. Elder Hartman, who had not spoken yet, simply nodded once. Permission, or perhaps just acknowledgement that desperate times genuinely required desperate measures. "Trial by selection," Matthias announced formally. 3 challenges over the next 3 weeks. I design them personally. I judge the results personally. The winner receives the Luna title, and we honor that outcome. No council interference, no political games, no attempts to rig the results. You want me to follow pack law? Fine. But we do it my way, or I walk, and you can explain the federal seizure to everyone yourselves. And what happens when some completely unqualified Omega wins and humiliates us in front of every allied pack in 3 states? Thompson demanded, voice shaking with barely controlled fury. Matthias smiled. It was not a kind expression. Then maybe we deserve to be humiliated, Elder Thompson. Maybe we have been doing this fundamentally wrong for so long that we forgot what real leadership actually looks like. The council departed in a flurry of muttered threats and promises to discuss the matter further in emergency session. Marcus stayed behind, waiting until the sound of expensive shoes on hardwood faded completely before speaking. You know this is genuinely insane, right? Opening the trials to absolutely everyone means complete chaos. We could end up with someone totally unqualified. Or we could end up with someone who actually gives a damn about this pack instead of their personal political career, Matthias countered. He moved to the window and looked out at the rain-soaked territory spread below. What does Stonehaven genuinely need right now, Marcus? Really need, not what the council thinks we need. Marcus considered carefully. Medical services. We lost our lead physician last year and never replaced him properly. The clinic is chronically understaffed. Wolves are literally dying from completely preventable diseases because we cannot afford proper healthcare infrastructure. We desperately need a healer. Then that is challenge 1. Medical crisis management under impossible conditions. See who can actually save lives when resources are limited and time is critical. Challenge 2. Tactical defense and strategic thinking. Redstone has been testing our borders for months. We need someone who can think several moves ahead, not just blindly follow orders. And challenge 3? Matthias turned from the window. His reflection in the rain-streaked glass looked older than 34, tired and worn down by impossible responsibility. Pack integration and political navigation. Prove you can earn genuine respect instead of demanding it based on bloodline. Show me you understand what it actually means to lead people who have absolutely no reason to follow you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing. When he finally spoke, his voice carried something that might have been hope or might have been resignation. With Marcus, it was sometimes impossible to tell the difference. You are looking for another Rebecca, someone who chooses this life deliberately instead of being born into it. I am looking for someone who will not shatter when the weight gets too heavy, Matthias corrected. Because it will get heavy, Marcus. This pack is actively dying. Whoever accepts this role is signing up for a fight we might genuinely lose despite our best efforts. By noon, the official announcement went out through both formal channels and the informal gossip networks that spread information faster than any official communication ever could. The Luna selection trials were open. Any unmated female wolf within Stonehaven territory could register to compete. 3 trials over 3 weeks. No bloodline requirements. No status restrictions. Winner takes the crown. The response was immediate and chaotic in equal measure. By evening, 47 wolves had registered their intent to compete. Marcus reviewed the growing list with barely concealed amusement mixed with genuine concern. Most of these are completely delusional, he observed dryly. Shop workers who think being Luna means wearing nice dresses and hosting fancy parties. A few genuine warriors looking to prove themselves against highborn competition. Several elderly widows who registered purely as protest votes against the council's traditional authority. Anyone actually viable in that mess? Maybe 3 who will not collapse unconscious in round 1. And there is one interesting outlier. Marcus paused deliberately, scrolling through his tablet. Dr. Elena Thorne registered at 11 o'clock last night. Very drunk, according to the administrative clerk who processed her paperwork. Matthias looked up sharply from his own work. The Omega running the free clinic down on the border? That is her. Former Army captain, combat medic with extensive field experience. 3 full deployments to Afghanistan, came back decorated with a chest full of medals and a severe case of PTSD. She was offered beta rank 5 years ago and refused it completely, deliberately took Omega designation instead as some kind of voluntary exile. She has been operating that borderland clinic ever since, mostly serving wolves the council refuses to fund proper health care for. Why would she possibly enter Luna trials? Marcus shrugged eloquently. No concrete idea, but she is genuinely qualified. Extensive combat medical training, proven leadership experience under fire, knows this territory better than most people born here, and she has absolutely zero existing political baggage or obligations. Matthias studied her name on the roster, black text on white screen. Elena Thorne. He had seen her perhaps twice in 5 years, always from significant distance. Dark hair usually pulled back in a severely practical bun. Somewhere in her mid to late 20s, she drove a beat-up Ford truck with a mobile medical unit built into the back and showed up wherever wolves needed medical help, regardless of their rank or ability to pay for treatment. She will not win, Matthias said with certainty. She is Omega by deliberate choice. That means she has fundamentally rejected everything the Luna position represents. Maybe, Marcus agreed neutrally. Or maybe she is playing an entirely different game than everyone else, and we just have not figured out the rules yet. Challenge 1 began exactly 3 days later on a gray Monday morning when the sky hung low and threatening over Montana wilderness. Matthias had worked with Dr. Yates, the pack's elderly and semi-retired physician, to design a scenario that would effectively separate genuine medical skill from ambitious pretenders. The location was an old warehouse on the edge of pack territory, hastily converted into a mass casualty disaster zone. Paint and props and professional theatrical makeup created visceral scenes of injury and trauma. 23 staged casualties scattered throughout the facility, with wounds ranging from minor cuts to immediately life-threatening hemorrhages. 47 candidates arrived in various states of preparation and confidence. Some wore designer athletic gear that probably cost more than most pack members earned in a month. Others showed up in practical, functional clothing, ready for actual work. Dr. Elena Thorne arrived last in her battered truck, wearing faded green scrubs and looking like she had quite possibly slept in her vehicle. Her eyes were slightly bloodshot, suggesting hangover or insufficient sleep or both. Matthias stood on the observation platform overlooking the warehouse floor. Marcus flanked him on one side, Dr. Yates on the other. Several council observers had come ostensibly to ensure procedural compliance, though everyone knew they were really gathering ammunition for future political battles. He activated the PA system, and his voice, rough and amplified, echoed through the cavernous space. Listen carefully. This is a mass casualty scenario. 23 injured wolves are scattered throughout this warehouse in various states of crisis. You have exactly 2 hours to establish a functional triage system, prioritize treatment appropriately, coordinate evacuation, and keep as many casualties alive as possible. You have access to 1 ambulance, extremely limited medical supplies, and whatever knowledge you brought with you. This is not testing your medical expertise. This is testing your leadership capability under absolute chaos. The scenario begins now. The overhead lights cut out instantly. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in ominous red. Recorded sounds of screaming and moaning filled the air at deafening volume. Most of the candidates panicked immediately and visibly. High-born wolves tried frantically to delegate responsibilities to lower-ranked wolves who simply refused to follow orders from complete strangers. The warriors focused obsessively on securing the perimeter against non-existent threats, completely missing the point. A group of 5 candidates formed an impromptu committee and proceeded to waste precious minutes arguing loudly about proper organizational structure instead of actually doing anything useful. Dr. Elena Thorne walked into the manufactured chaos carrying a clipboard and a pen. She moved methodically, systematically, clinically through the warehouse space. She approached each staged casualty with professional detachment, asked basic assessment questions, made notes, and moved on to the next without offering comfort or reassurance or any emotional response whatsoever. After exactly 12 minutes, she had evaluated every single casualty in the entire facility. Then she did something that made Elder Thompson gasp audibly from the observation deck. She pulled colored ribbons from her medical bag and began deliberately tagging casualties. Red ribbons for immediate life-threatening injuries that were potentially survivable with rapid intervention. Yellow ribbons for serious but currently stable injuries that could safely wait. Green ribbons for minor injuries requiring minimal intervention. and black ribbons for casualties that were beyond any hope of survival given available resources and time constraints. 4 casualties received black ribbons, expectant, dying. One was a pregnant woman with a severed femoral artery, bleeding profusely from a wound that would kill her within minutes. One was an elderly male with massive head trauma and exposed brain matter. 2 others had injuries specifically designed by Dr. Yates to be medically unsalvageable within the scenario's carefully constructed constraints. The pregnant woman was being played by a young pack volunteer named Sarah, who took her role extremely seriously. She began screaming when Elena tagged her black, begging desperately for help, clutching at Elena's scrubs with hands covered in stage blood and genuine tears streaming down her face. Elena pulled away with clinical precision. Her face remained completely empty of visible emotion, locked in the professional detachment that Matthias instantly recognized from his own mirror. The expression of someone who had made this exact impossible choice before, in real war zones where the blood was genuine and the consequences permanent and haunting. Several other candidates rushed to assist the black-tagged casualties, moved by compassion or horror or the fundamental inability to simply watch someone die when you possessed medical knowledge. Elena's voice cut through the chaos like a surgical blade. Step away from the black tags immediately. A young candidate named Jessica Chen, daughter of wealthy merchant family, was already on her knees beside the pregnant woman trying frantically to stop the bleeding. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "She is pregnant! We cannot just let her die!" "She has a completely severed femoral artery, and we have absolutely no surgical capability in this facility. She will be dead in 4 minutes regardless of anything we attempt. I have 19 other casualties I can realistically save if I focus resources appropriately. Every single second you waste on an impossible case is 1 more second that someone else is bleeding out. Do the mathematics." "That is murder." "No," Elena said flatly. Her voice was dead, clinical, the tone of someone reciting facts that had been burned into her soul through repeated trauma. "That is triage. That is combat medicine under resource constraints. That is what leadership actually looks like when all of your choices are terrible and you have to select the least awful option. Welcome to reality." She turned away from Jessica and began directing the other candidates like chess pieces on a board. She did not ask nicely, did not negotiate or explain, just gave clear, concise orders that left absolutely no room for argument or discussion. Green tags could walk to the ambulance independently. Yellow tags needed pressure bandages and could be treated by candidates with basic first aid training, which she assessed with rapid-fire questions that separated genuine knowledge from theoretical understanding. Red tags were her personal responsibility and hers alone. Matthias watched transfixed as she performed needle decompression on a tension pneumothorax casualty, using supplies that would make a civilian emergency room doctor weep. She inserted an IV line into a patient's external jugular vein because both arms were too damaged for standard access points. She applied a combat tourniquet to a completely mangled leg with the kind of practiced efficiency that only came from doing the exact same procedure in the back of a moving vehicle while under active enemy fire. She finished in exactly 87 minutes. 18 casualties stable and ready for transport. 4 black-tagged casualties officially declared dead and covered with sheets. 1 additional casualty lost because 2 candidates had ignored her explicit orders and attempted an impossible save, which meant a red-tagged patient bled out while resources were catastrophically diverted. Elena stood in the center of the warehouse, surrounded by organized chaos, her scrubs completely soaked in stage blood, her hands shaking with that characteristic fine tremor that came after massive adrenaline dumps when the immediate crisis ended and delayed stress response began. She looked up at the observation deck where Matthias watched, and their eyes met for one electric moment. He saw everything in that brief connection: recognition, understanding, the same haunted knowledge that lived behind his own eyes every time he closed them and saw the faces of men he had left behind. This woman had made these choices before, not in comfortable simulations with fake blood and acting volunteers, in genuine war zones where the screaming was real and death was permanent and you carried the weight of those decisions for the rest of your natural life. The tribunal convened immediately in a smaller room adjacent to the warehouse. Jessica Chen filed a formal complaint, tearfully claiming that Dr. Thorne had violated the fundamental healer's oath by actively refusing treatment to dying patients. Elder Thompson seized on this eagerly, finally seeing an opportunity to eliminate what he clearly considered a problematic candidate. The 9 finalists who had survived the full 2 hours were required to stand before the council and assembled observers, while Matthias and the official judges rendered their verdict. Elena stood with perfect military posture, hands clasped behind her back at parade rest, face completely expressionless. She did not defend herself, did not offer explanations or justifications. She simply waited with the infinite patience of someone accustomed to being judged by people who had never walked her particular path. Thompson spoke first, voice dripping with false concern. "Dr. Thorne, would you care to explain how you justify completely abandoning a pregnant woman to die when you possess the medical skills that might have potentially saved her life?" Elena's answer was immediate and utterly devoid of emotion. "I do not justify it, Elder Thompson. There is no moral justification possible for choosing who lives and who dies. There is only cold mathematics, 4 unsavable casualties versus 23 potential survivors. I chose 4 deaths to prevent 19 additional deaths. That is command decision-making. That is what leadership requires when you lack the luxury of saving everyone. If you want someone who will make you feel morally comfortable about impossible choices, I suggest you hire a therapist. If you want someone who will keep the body count as low as practically possible, hire me." The silence that followed was thick and profoundly uncomfortable. Several candidates shifted nervously. Jessica was crying quietly in the corner. Thompson looked like he had bitten into something spoiled. Matthias stood. His voice carried easily in the enclosed space, roughened by years of shouting orders over gunfire and explosions and the screaming chaos of combat. "Dr. Thorne is absolutely correct." Thompson turned to stare at him incredulously. "Alpha Blackclaw, surely you cannot possibly condone this callous disregard for life. She deliberately abandoned dying wolves. She made the exact same choice I made in Mosul in 2008, Matthias said conversationally. His eyes were hard as flint stone, living up to the nickname his Marines had given him. "Insurgent attack on a refugee camp. 40 wounded civilians. I had exactly 6 combat medics and supplies for maybe half that number. We triaged 11 as expectant. Marked them black and left them to die, so we could focus limited resources on the ones we actually had a realistic chance of helping. One of those 11 was a kid, maybe 9 years old. I can still see his face perfectly. I see it every single time I close my eyes." He paused deliberately, letting the words settle like stones dropping into deep water. Anyone in this room who has never been forced to make that choice should pray to whatever gods they believe in that they never have to. Because it does not get easier with practice. You do not become numb to it. You just learn to keep functioning despite the crushing weight. That is what separates people who can genuinely lead from people who collapse under pressure. Dr. Thorne did not collapse. She did her job with professional competence. And because she made those hard choices, 18 casualties survived who might have died if she had wasted precious resources on impossible saves. He looked directly at Elena. She met his gaze steadily, and for one suspended moment, the rest of the room ceased to exist. 2 combat veterans recognizing each other across the gulf of shared trauma that civilians could never truly understand or access. Something passed between them. Electric. Undeniable. Matthias felt his wolf surge forward in his mind with sudden fierce recognition. "Mate." The word echoed through his consciousness like a gunshot in enclosed space. His wolf had never reacted this way to anyone, not even Rebecca, who he had loved deeply. This was different. Primal, biological imperative screaming that this woman was meant to be his. But she was Omega, suppressed. How could the mate bond? He forced the thoughts down brutally and focused on finishing the trial results. "Challenge 1 results," Matthias announced formally. 47 candidates entered. 9 advanced to round 2. Dr. Elena Thorne ranks first. That night, Matthias found it completely impossible to sleep, which was unfortunately nothing new. Insomnia had been his constant companion since Kandahar. He walked the pack house grounds at 2 a.m, following worn paths through gardens that Rebecca had planted years ago when she still believed they would have decades together. Someone still maintained them, probably Marcus, who understood that grief required tangible connections to survive. He heard the sound before he saw the source. The distinctive flick and scratch of a lighter, followed by the acrid smell of tobacco smoke carried on the wind. He followed it to the back of the medical clinic building, a small converted structure at the edge of the main compound. Dr. Elena Thorne sat on the ground with her back against brick wall, knees drawn up protectively, a cigarette burning between her fingers. She was not actively smoking it, just holding it, watching the ember glow and fade in the darkness. Her hands were shaking violently now, full body tremors, not just fine motor control, delayed stress response, the body finally processing what the mind had carefully compartmentalized during the crisis. Matthias approached slowly and deliberately, making his footsteps audible so he would not startle her. Combat veterans genuinely hated being surprised. She glanced up but did not speak, just watched him approach with those dark, exhausted eyes that had seen far too much. He sat down beside her without asking permission, leaving respectful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. Just existed together in the Montana night, with rain starting to fall again and thunder rumbling in the distance like artillery practice. "Kandahar," Matthias finally said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. 2017, early spring. Our convoy hit an IED on what was supposed to be a routine supply run. 7 casualties scattered across 50 meters of kill zone. I was the senior NCO on scene, which meant triage decisions fell to me. We had limited medevac capability, and the LZ was taking sporadic fire. I had to choose who got on the bird and who stayed behind. Left 2 Marines in that sand because they were not going to survive the flight, and I desperately needed the space for ones who might make it. They both died calling for help while I flew away. I was 26 years old, and I had been in country maybe 8 months. Elena took a drag from her cigarette. Her hand was still shaking so badly she almost missed her own mouth. "Same deployment, different unit. 3 months after your incident. My squad hit another IED during a patrol outside the wire. 5 wounded, including my team leader, Sergeant Mills. He was 42, 3 kids back home, 2 more months until rotation out. I could only stabilize 2 casualties before the extraction bird arrived, and we were taking heavy contact. Had to choose based on who could still fight effectively if we got hit again during evac. Mills told me to leave him behind, said he had lived a good life, and the younger soldiers deserved the chance more. So I did exactly what he ordered, left him in that compound with a pressure bandage and a morphine drip, and the knowledge that he was going to bleed out alone. He died before QRF got there. How do you sleep? I do not, mostly. Bourbon helps take the edge off. The VA prescribed sleeping pills, but they gave me nightmares that were somehow worse than the insomnia. What about you? Bourbon and Ambien. I still wake up at exactly 0300 every single night like my body is stuck on watch rotation schedule. They passed the cigarette back and forth in silence, even though Matthias had not smoked since he was 19 and trying desperately to look older than his actual age. The tobacco was stale and harsh, but it gave them something concrete to focus on besides the humming tension between them. The mate bond was getting stronger with proximity. Matthias could feel it now, a warm, persistent pressure in his chest that pulled toward her like magnetic north. His wolf was pushing hard, demanding that he acknowledge the connection, claim her, mark her, make the bond permanent and undeniable. But something was fundamentally wrong. The bond felt strangely muted on her end, suppressed somehow, like something was actively blocking her wolf from responding fully to the recognition. "Why did you register for the trials?" Matthias asked. "You clearly do not want to be Luna." Elena laughed. The sound was bitter and sharp. "I was drunk, spectacularly drunk. I had a 17-year-old patient die on my table from a completely preventable infection because I lack proper surgical equipment. The council refuses to fund Omega Healthcare adequately. So I got extremely drunk and decided if I won these stupid trials, I could force them to give my clinic proper resources through legal contract. Then I would disappear back to my regular life. That is not how the binding works. I know that now. Sober Me actually read the full legal documentation. The winner is bound as Luna for life. No abdication clause, no divorce provision, no escape. It is a trap, and I walked straight into it while drunk and stupid." She stubbed out the cigarette with more force than strictly necessary. "But that kid died for absolutely nothing if I quit now. At least if I make it through round 2, I can leverage my participation for some kind of funding concession." "You will not win," Matthias said. It was not meant cruelly, just a statement of tactical reality. Round 2 is tactical defense under hostile conditions. Round 3 is pack integration and political navigation. You are an Omega who has deliberately isolated yourself for 5 years. You do not have the political capital or the social connections. Probably not, Elena agreed. She was already lighting another cigarette with hands that refused to stop shaking. But I will try anyway. Better than sitting back and watching more children die because elderly men refuse to fund health care for wolves they consider inferior. Matthias almost told her about the mate bond right then. Almost said your wolf is calling to mine across whatever barrier someone put between us, and I do not fully understand why you cannot feel it. But we are meant for this, meant for each other, destiny or biology, or whatever force drives these impossible connections. But she had just explicitly said she felt trapped and was desperately looking for escape routes. Telling her about an involuntary biological bond would be adding another chain to someone who clearly felt already suffocated by obligations she never wanted. So he stayed silent and finished the cigarette and tried to ignore the way his wolf was howling with pure frustration at his restraint. They sat together until the rain started falling harder, and Elena finally stood, joints cracking in ways that marked her as older than 27 in experience if not actual years. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for defending me in there, for understanding why I made those choices." "I did not do it for you specifically," Matthias said. "I did it because you were objectively correct and someone needed to say it publicly." Elena nodded once, a gesture of understanding if not necessarily agreement. Then she walked back toward her truck parked in the shadows. Matthias watched her go and wondered what the hell he was supposed to do with a mate bond to someone who was clearly running from her own power. His wolf had recognized her. That was undeniable. But until he understood what was sealed inside her and why, he could not risk claiming a bond she might not be able to accept. Challenge 2 came exactly 18 hours later. Not a simulation this time. A genuine crisis. The emergency alert pulled Matthias directly from his paperwork at dawn. Redstone Pack had crossed the border, seized Murphy Farm. The family was being held hostage. 20-plus wolves were entrenched in strategically valuable territory. This was not a drill or an exercise. This was an actual invasion. He convened the War Council immediately. Matthias, Marcus, senior warriors, and critically, the 9 remaining trial candidates. Because if they genuinely wanted to be Luna, they needed to prove they could handle real crises under authentic pressure, not just carefully controlled simulations. He laid out the situation with military precision. Drone footage displayed on screens showed enemy positions and defensive preparations. Redstone Alpha Garrett Kane has seized 40 acres of our strategic territory and is holding the Murphy family hostage. Intelligence suggests 20-plus wolves entrenched with prepared defensive positions. We have 200 wolves total in our pack, only 50 with actual combat training. We cannot kill Redstone wolves without triggering a full-pack war. 200 versus their 400 is suicide mathematics. We need the hostages returned safely, our territory reclaimed, and absolutely no escalation that brings other packs into the conflict. You have exactly 5 minutes to propose a viable strategy. Immediate chaos erupted. Young warriors demanded a full frontal assault to teach Redstone about consequences. Older politicians insisted on negotiation and diplomatic channels. Several candidates looked actively terrified and were clearly reconsidering their participation. Dr. Elena Thorne raised her hand calmly. Matthias nodded toward her with genuine curiosity about what she would propose. She stepped forward to the tactical display and studied the drone footage with intense focus that suggested professional military training. You do not fight them directly. You make occupation so unpleasant that they choose to leave voluntarily. Elder Thompson scoffed loudly. "That is not a strategy. That is wishful thinking." Elena ignored him completely, keeping her full attention focused on Matthias. Redstone crossed the border expecting an easy territorial grab. They are counting on Stonehaven being weak and poorly led, so we prove them wrong, but not through direct confrontation, which favors their superior numbers. We make occupation logistically and psychologically unsustainable. Explain your proposal in detail. Phase 1 is isolation. We cut power to the farm. We control the local electrical grid, so this is simple. We block their resupply routes using surveillance teams, not combat units. We jam their communications. We make them feel completely cut off and vulnerable. Phase 2 is psychological pressure. We surround the farm with highly visible presence, 50 wolves on rotating watch schedules. They are constantly being observed, always on high alert, never able to relax or sleep. We play sounds over loudspeakers, wolves howling, branches breaking, environmental noises designed to prey on paranoia and sleep deprivation. Phase 3 is diplomatic face-saving. We give Kane a way out that preserves his pride. He publicly claims this was a successful military training exercise and is withdrawing as a gesture of goodwill. Saves his reputation, gets him out without bloodshed. She stepped back from the tactical display. Military doctrine is clear. Your enemy always needs a viable exit strategy. If you give them one that preserves their dignity, they will frequently take it. Pride is significantly cheaper than blood. The room fell into stunned silence. Matthias ran through the logistics rapidly in his head. The plan was tactically sound. More than sound, it was exactly what he would have proposed himself if he had thought of it first. Where exactly did you learn psychological operations tactics? Captain Emma Thorne, 7th Psychological Operations Group, United States Army. Before I switched specialties to combat medicine. I spent 18 months in theater making insurgent groups too paranoid and suspicious to operate effectively. The same fundamental principles apply to territorial disputes between wolf packs. Matthias made his decision instantly. We execute Dr. Thorne's operational plan. Marcus, you coordinate the surveillance teams. Council members, you handle the power grid shutdown and communications jamming. Make it look like infrastructure failure, not deliberate sabotage. Dr. Thorne, you are with me personally. The Murphy family may require immediate medical support when we extract them. The operation consumed exactly 72 hours, 3 days of careful, methodical pressure. Redstone wolves became increasingly agitated as power remained off, supplies failed to arrive on schedule, and the constant visible Stonehaven presence made genuine sleep completely impossible. At hour 68, Garrett Kane finally requested a formal parley. Matthias met him at the border marker. Marcus and Elena flanked him on either side. Kane was 38 years old, heavily muscled, radiating the kind of aggressive confidence that marked alphas who led primarily through physical dominance rather than strategic thinking. Kane looked at Matthias with grudging respect mixed with clear frustration. Blackclaw, you are considerably more competent than our intelligence reports suggested. Your intelligence was fundamentally wrong about many things. Who planned the siege doctrine? Kane studied Elena with sharp assessment. Former military service? Captain, 7th Psychological Operations Group. Kane actually laughed. The sound was not particularly friendly. Blackclaw, you are evaluating military assets under the convenient cover of Luna trials. That is genuinely clever. They negotiated withdrawal terms for the next 20 minutes. Both sides would publicly classify the incident as a joint military training exercise. No casualties officially recognized. No formal hostilities declared. No precedent established for future territorial disputes. Kane salvaged his pride, while Stonehaven retained its territory. The Murphy family would be released unharmed. But as Kane turned to leave with his forces, he stopped and looked back at Matthias with an expression that mixed warning with something that might have been sympathy. You are extremely young for an alpha position, Blackclaw, inexperienced in pack politics. Stonehaven is actively dying whether you want to acknowledge it or not. I can smell the decay from 3 territories away. 3 separate packs are currently circling like vultures waiting for final collapse. Choose your Luna extremely carefully. She might be the only thing standing between your pack and complete extinction. Walking back toward the compound, Elena immediately checked the Murphy family for injuries with professional efficiency. The youngest child, 7-year-old Emma Murphy, had a sprained ankle from hiding in the barn during the occupation. Elena splinted it using materials from her ever-present medical kit, while talking softly to the terrified girl in that calm, steady voice that made panic seem impossible. You are incredibly brave, Elena told Emma gently. Braver than many adults I know. This splint will help your ankle heal properly. You will be running around causing trouble again in approximately 2 weeks. Emma sniffled, wiping at tears with her sleeve. The bad wolves scared me. They scared absolutely everyone. That is precisely what makes courage real and meaningful, being genuinely frightened and still doing what needs to be done anyway. Elena finished securing the splint with practiced movements. There, all finished. Mrs. Murphy, the child's mother, grabbed Elena's hand with both of hers. Thank you so much for everything. They told us you planned the entire strategy that got them out without anyone getting hurt. Elena looked profoundly uncomfortable with the direct praise. I simply applied tactical principles I learned in other contexts. Your alpha made all the genuinely difficult command decisions. You performed exceptionally well, Matthias said when Elena stood and brushed dirt from her knees. She met his eyes briefly, then deliberately looked away. The avoidance was becoming a pattern he was starting to recognize. I did what was tactically necessary given available resources. Most people cannot see the fundamental difference between what is necessary and what is easy. You see it clearly. They walked back toward the compound together in comfortable silence. The Murphy family had been loaded into vehicles for complete medical evaluation at the main facility. Marcus was efficiently coordinating the withdrawal of surveillance teams. The immediate crisis was successfully resolved. But Matthias could not focus properly on the tactical victory. His entire awareness was locked on the woman walking exactly 3 feet to his left. The mate bond sang with proximity, creating a harmonic frequency that made his wolf increasingly restless and demanding. Every instinct screamed to close that minimal distance between them, touch her, claim her, make the connection permanent and undeniable. He had never experienced anything remotely like this intensity. In 34 years of life, through dozens of attractive women, multiple relationships that had ended amicably when the women finally realized he was too fundamentally damaged for normal civilian life, he had never felt this overwhelming pull. But Elena seemed frustratingly unaffected. She walked with perfect military posture, hands clasped behind her back at parade rest, full attention focused forward. Professional distance maintained like she was escorting a superior officer, not standing beside someone her soul should recognize as destined mate. Either she genuinely did not feel the bond at all, or she was exceptionally skilled at hiding her true reactions. Matthias suspected the latter because he had seen the subtle tells, the way her pupils dilated noticeably whenever they locked eyes, the slight hitch in her breathing pattern when he moved closer, the flush that crept up her neck during their cigarette conversation. She definitely felt something, but she was fighting the connection with the same iron discipline she applied to absolutely everything else in her life. They reached the compound perimeter fence. Elena stopped walking. I should check in at my clinic, make certain no emergency patients arrived while I was occupied with the crisis. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. Medical emergencies rarely respect conventional business hours. Elena. He deliberately used her first name directly for the first time. Watched her react with that small flinch, the visible tension in her shoulders. What exactly are you running from? She looked at him then, really looked, dark eyes searching his face for something. What makes you think I am running from anything? Because I know precisely what running looks like from extensive personal experience. I did it myself for 2 solid years after I came back from Afghanistan. Picked up and moved every 6 months like clockwork. New city, new job, never staying anywhere long enough to build genuine connections. It took Marcus physically dragging me back here to make me finally stop. That is not the same situation, is it not? You are 27 years old with combat decorations and medical training that would get you hired anywhere in the country. Instead, you are operating a free clinic in the middle of nowhere, Montana, treating wolves who cannot pay, systematically rejecting rank and status. That is not dedication to a cause. That is penance for something you think you did wrong. Elena's jaw visibly tightened. You do not know me well enough to make that kind of assessment. I know you well enough to recognize a fellow soldier who is still actively fighting yesterday's war in their head. Matthias took one deliberate step closer. Not crowding her space, just reducing the distance, testing boundaries. What happened over there that made you decide you deserved to be relegated to Omega status? For one suspended moment, he thought she might actually answer. He saw the words clearly forming behind her eyes, saw the desperate need to share the crushing weight with someone who might genuinely understand. Then her walls slammed down with almost audible force. I need to check my clinic. Congratulations on your successful crisis management, Alpha. She walked away before he could formulate any kind of response. Matthias stood watching her disappear into the darkness toward the isolated building where she lived and worked in self-imposed exile from normal pack life. His wolf howled with pure frustration inside his mind. Matthias understood the feeling completely. Marcus materialized from the shadows where he had probably been stationed the entire time, maintaining the illusion of privacy while fulfilling security protocols. She feels it too. The mate bond. I know she does. Then why not simply tell her? Mate bonds are extremely rare. You are both unmated adults of appropriate age, clearly attracted to each other on multiple levels. This should be straightforward. Nothing about this situation is remotely straightforward. Matthias ran his hand through his hair in pure frustration. Her wolf is deliberately suppressed, Marcus. I do not know how or why, but she is definitely not a genuine Omega. The bond feels strangely muted on her end, like something is actively blocking normal wolf responses. And during the siege, under extreme stress, her eyes flashed gold for just a second. Only alpha wolves have gold eyes. Marcus was quiet, carefully processing this information. Then, very cautiously, "You believe she is hiding her true nature. I believe someone did something to her, sealed her wolf somehow, made her appear Omega when her true designation is something completely different." Matthias looked toward the dark shape of Elena's clinic in the distance. "And until I understand exactly what was done and why, I cannot tell her about the mate bond. It would represent one more trap in a life that has clearly been full of them." 3 more days until the final trial results would be formally announced. 3 more days of this impossible tension pulling him in directions he did not fully understand. And somewhere in the darkness, Matthias had the distinct feeling that someone was watching Elena very carefully, waiting to see if whatever they had locked inside her would finally break free. The assassination attempt came on a Wednesday night, exactly 48 hours before the trial results would be officially announced and binding contracts signed. Elena was working late at her clinic as usual, reviewing the final integration reports that would determine her official ranking. The facility was deliberately isolated, a converted barn structure at the far edge of pack territory where she could serve borderland wolves without attracting council scrutiny or interference. She had always preferred working alone after normal hours. Fewer political complications, more actual medicine, less performative healthcare designed to impress observers rather than genuinely help patients. She heard them before she actually saw them. 2 distinct sets of footsteps, moving with careful coordination, too synchronized to be random patients seeking emergency treatment. Circling the building perimeter, establishing overlapping fields of fire. Her combat instincts flared immediately. Heart rate accelerated, breathing deepened. Training from 3 deployments kicked in automatically, bypassing conscious thought to reach pure survival response. She reached for the emergency beacon Marcus had given her during the first week of trials. Small device, red button, direct alert to pack security. Her fingers brushed the smooth plastic surface just as the front door exploded violently inward with enough force to rip it completely off the hinges. 2 wolves, masked, moving with professional military precision that marked them as former service members or extensively trained private security. Not rogues, these were pack members, Stonehaven wolves, betrayal from within the territory. Elena threw the beacon toward the back window with all her strength, heard glass shatter with satisfying crystalline clarity. The impact should trigger automatic activation, even if the device was damaged. Hopefully Marcus would receive the alert and respond before these attackers accomplished whatever they had been sent to do. Then she grabbed the nearest potential weapon, a metal medical tray loaded with surgical scalpels. Definitely not ideal for combat, significantly better than nothing. The first attacker was young, maybe mid-20s, moving with the overconfident aggression of someone who had been told this would be simple. He came in directly expecting easy prey, no defensive capability, quick elimination. Elena sidestepped his clumsy lunge with textbook efficiency and opened his forearm from wrist to elbow with a scalpel. Surgical precision. Deep enough to cause genuine pain and immediate blood loss. Not deep enough to sever any critical arteries or cause permanent disability. He screamed with shocked surprise and stumbled backward, clutching his arm, blood pouring between his fingers in steady streams that suggested she had nicked a minor vessel. Not life-threatening, definitely incapacitating. The second attacker was fundamentally different. Older, probably late 30s, former military based on his movement patterns and tactical awareness. He did not hesitate, did not waste time with elaborate attacks. He simply drove his shoulder directly into her midsection with brutal force, slamming her backward against the steel examination table hard enough to dent the metal. Air left her lungs explosively. Stars burst across her vision in bright, painful flashes. Acute pain radiated from her lower ribs, where at least 2 had cracked under the impact. She tasted copper blood in her mouth from where she had bitten her own tongue. She brought her knee up sharply into his solar plexus with everything she had remaining, connected solidly. He grunted with pain but did not release his grip. Body armor under his jacket absorbed most of the impact force. They grappled violently, crashed through medical equipment worth thousands of dollars. Glass shattered, supplies scattered across the floor. Pharmaceutical vials rolled under furniture. The destruction was catastrophic. Years of careful supply building destroyed in seconds. Then she felt the knife, sharp cold pain on her left side, just below her ribcage. He had drawn a combat blade, attempting to drive it upward toward her heart with professional killing technique. She twisted desperately at the last possible moment. The knife slipped, cutting horizontally across her abdomen instead of penetrating vertically into her chest cavity. Still extremely bad. Perforated bowel was highly probable given the blade angle and depth, but survivable if she could end this confrontation quickly and get proper medical attention before septic shock set in. The pain was absolutely white-hot, nauseating waves that made her vision gray at the edges. Her body wanted to shut down, curl into protective fetal position, prioritize immediate survival over continued combat. Something inside her snapped then. Not metaphorically, not psychologically. She physically felt it break. The seal her father had placed on her wolf 22 years ago when she was 5 years old. The magical binding that had kept her apex predator nature carefully locked away for her entire conscious life. It cracked under the overwhelming stress of genuine mortal danger. Power flooded through her nervous system like lightning seeking ground, raw, primal, absolutely overwhelming in intensity. Her eyes flared bright gold. Not the brief flash Matthias had observed during previous stress. This was sustained luminescence, burning with inner fire that had nothing to do with reflected light and everything to do with supernatural power finally released. The attacker saw the transformation. His eyes widened with genuine shock and rapidly escalating fear. Whatever intelligence briefing he had received, it definitely had not prepared him for this development. Elena stopped fighting like a human with extensive military training, started fighting like the apex predator she had always been underneath the suppression. The difference was profound and immediately obvious. She drove her thumb directly into his eye socket with no hesitation whatsoever. Felt delicate bones crack and collapse under pressure. He released her instantly, screaming, both hands going to his ruined eye. She grabbed the industrial strength cleaning solution from the nearby counter and threw the entire bottle directly into his face. Chemical burns added to the existing trauma. He went down hard, clawing desperately at his eyes, combat effectiveness completely eliminated. The younger attacker was attempting to get back up, despite his injured arm. Elena grabbed a portable oxygen tank, a solid metal cylinder weighing approximately 15 pounds, and swung it like an improvised club. Connected with his skull with sickening impact. He dropped immediately and remained motionless, unconscious but breathing. Pulse steady when she checked with professional detachment despite her own critical injuries. She stood swaying dangerously in the wreckage of her clinic. One hand pressed firmly against the knife wound, blood soaking through her scrubs in steadily expanding dark stains, but her eyes were still glowing brilliant gold with sustained supernatural power. The transformation was pushing harder, demanding complete release, trying to force her into full wolf form for the first time in over 2 decades. No, not yet. Not like this. Not when she had no idea what would happen when the seal broke completely. She forced the power back down with iron discipline learned through years of deliberate suppression. The seal was badly cracked, but not yet fully shattered. She could still maintain some degree of control, for now. The clinic door crashed open violently for the second time that evening. Marcus burst through with pistol drawn and trained, full tactical stance, security teams spreading out behind him in professional formation. His eyes went impossibly wide when he saw her, saw the glowing golden eyes that marked Alpha bloodline, saw the 2 attackers comprehensively incapacitated, saw the catastrophic amount of blood covering everything. "Medic!" He barked into his radio with command authority. "Officer down. Penetrating abdominal trauma with significant blood loss. Get Dr. Yates and the Alpha here immediately." Elena tried to speak, but her vocal cords refused to cooperate properly. The shock was setting in now that immediate danger had passed. She managed to point weakly at the 2 attackers, one unconscious, one writhing on the floor with chemical burns and probable permanent eye damage, both still breathing, both salvageable. She had controlled her response even in pure survival mode. Proportional force, military rules of engagement maintained. Combat discipline had held despite the supernatural power demanding she simply tear them apart. Then her legs gave out completely. Marcus caught her before she could hit the floor, lowering her carefully to avoid aggravating her injuries. "Stay with me, Doc. Help is en route. Just stay conscious." The last coherent thought she had before darkness took her was, Matthias is going to be absolutely furious when he finds out about this. Matthias arrived exactly 6 minutes later. He had been reviewing security reports in his office when Marcus's emergency alert came through. He made the drive from Pack House to Borderland Clinic at speeds that were definitely illegal, probably dangerous, and absolutely necessary. He came through the clinic entrance like a Category 5 hurricane given human form. Marcus barely managed to step aside fast enough to avoid being run over. Matthias's eyes swept the scene with trained tactical assessment. Destroyed medical equipment. Pharmaceutical supplies scattered like confetti. 2 attackers being secured by security personnel. Elena on the floor with Marcus applying direct pressure to her abdominal wound. Then he saw her eyes, still faintly glowing gold even as consciousness faded. The seal was cracking, breaking, her true nature finally forcing its way to the surface after 2 decades of magical suppression. The mate bond roared inside his chest with protective fury so intense it made the air crackle with raw alpha dominance. His wolf surged forward with overwhelming possessive rage. Every single wolf in the room except Marcus instinctively bared their throats in automatic submission response. "Estimated time of arrival for evacuation transport?" Matthias demanded. His voice was barely controlled rage wrapped in command authority. "Approximately 15 minutes. Dr. Yates is preparing the surgical suite at main medical facility." "She does not have 15 minutes to wait." Matthias knelt beside Elena with controlled precision, assessed her injuries with the clinical detachment of someone who had performed extensive combat triage under fire. Perforated bowel requiring immediate surgical repair. Yates's hands shake too badly. Advanced Parkinson's disease limits his fine motor control. He should not be performing this procedure. "Then who does the surgery, sir?" "I do." Matthias was already stripping off his jacket with sharp, efficient movements. "I have performed field surgery before under significantly worse conditions. This is functionally no different. Sir, this is your top-ranked Luna candidate. If she dies on your table, the council will absolutely crucify you for overstepping. If she dies waiting for an ambulance to arrive, she is equally dead. Clear that examination table immediately. Bring me every surgical supply remaining in this building, and get Dr. Yates on speakerphone. He can walk me through the specific steps I might be rusty on." Marcus did not waste time arguing. He simply moved with practiced efficiency. Matthias looked down at Elena. Her eyes flickered open briefly, still gold, still glowing with barely contained power. "You are going to survive this," he told her firmly. Not reassurance. Direct command from an alpha to his pack member, to his mate. "I am not losing you. Do you understand me?" She tried to speak, managed only a whisper through shock and blood loss. "Seal, cracked badly. Don't let them know what I am." "I already know exactly what you are," Matthias said quietly, intensely. "I have known for days. Military intelligence files are remarkably thorough when you know the right people to ask. It changes absolutely nothing, except now we stop hiding from your own power." Her eyes widened with shock, then closed as she lost consciousness completely from blood loss and traumatic shock. The surgery took 1 hour and 37 minutes that felt like an eternity compressed into hell. Matthias, with both hands deep inside Elena's abdominal cavity, cutting away damaged tissue, while Dr. Yates talked him through the procedure over speakerphone with remarkable patience and clarity. Marcus managing bleeding, anticipating supply needs, functioning as impromptu surgical nurse with surprising competence that suggested he had done this before in combat zones. The smell of blood and antiseptic and internal organs filled the small clinic. The steady mechanical beep of portable monitoring equipment provided rhythm to their work. The awareness hung heavy in the air that one wrong cut, one misplaced suture, and she would die on this table. Elena's supernatural wolf was actively helping despite the partial seal still in place. Her healing factor had kicked into overdrive. Accelerated clotting prevented her from bleeding out during the procedure. Tissue regeneration was already beginning at cellular level, visible to Matthias's trained eye. It was the only reason she had any realistic chance of surviving the delay and improvised surgical conditions. Matthias located the perforation in her small intestine. The knife had cut clean through the bowel wall in 2 places. He excised the damaged section with a scalpel that felt simultaneously foreign and familiar in his hands. 8 years since he had done anything remotely like this, but muscle memory apparently retained what conscious thought had forgotten. "Good, steady hands," Dr. Yates's voice crackled over the speaker. "Now you need to reconnect the healthy sections. This is the critical part. The anastomosis must be tension-free and absolutely watertight, or she will develop catastrophic leaks." Matthias's hands remained rock-steady despite the crushing pressure. He had performed combat medicine under mortar fire. This was just another form of battlefield with different weapons. He could do this. He would do this. Sutures placed with meticulous precision. Each one exactly the right depth, the right spacing, the right tension. Creating watertight seal between healthy tissue sections. No gaps in the anastomosis. No excessive stress on delicate intestinal wall. "Excellent work, son," Dr. Yates said with genuine approval. "You are doing better than many surgeons I have supervised. Now irrigate the abdominal cavity thoroughly. We absolutely must prevent secondary infection from intestinal bacteria." The burning sensation of saline washing out the abdominal cavity almost woke Elena even through deep shock. She whimpered involuntarily, her body attempting to arch away from the pain despite unconsciousness. The mate bond flared with her distress, making Matthias's wolf howl in sympathetic agony. "Almost finished," Matthias murmured. Not to Yates or Marcus, to her, to Elena. Knowing somehow that she could hear him even in this state, that his voice might anchor her through the worst of it. "Just a little bit longer. Stay with me. Come back to me." Finally, the last layer of sutures, external closure performed layer by meticulous layer. Fascia. Muscle, subcutaneous tissue, skin, each step taking precious time but necessary to prevent catastrophic complications later, each layer bringing her closer to survival. They loaded her onto a proper stretcher, transported her to the main medical facility where actual hospital-grade equipment could monitor her properly through recovery. The ambulance ride took 12 minutes. Matthias held her hand the entire time, feeling her pulse beat steady and reassuringly strong against his fingers, despite everything she had been through. His wolf had calmed somewhat from the initial protective fury. Mate was alive, critically injured but alive. That was acceptable, barely. The two attackers had been interrogated by Marcus while Matthias operated. Both had confessed within 30 minutes. Marcus possessed particular skills in interrogation that were better left unexamined too closely. Skills learned in dark places doing dark work for his country. Elder Thompson had ordered the assassination directly. Could not risk Elena winning the trials and exposing years of systematic corruption and embezzlement. Better to eliminate her permanently and claim tragic accident during random rogue attack. No witnesses, no consequences. Thompson was now in secure custody pending formal tribunal. His political career was comprehensively destroyed. His family connections and accumulated wealth would not save him from charges this severe. Attempted murder of a pack member during official Luna trials carried mandatory exile at minimum, potential execution at maximum. But the damage was already done. Elena had nearly died because Matthias had failed to adequately protect her. That failure burned like acid in his chest. Elena woke 36 hours later in the main medical facility's private recovery room. The space was comfortable, more like a hotel room than a hospital. Soft lighting, actual furniture beyond just the medical bed, windows overlooking pack territory. Matthias was still sitting exactly where he had been when they brought her in, the same chair pulled up beside her bed, his hand wrapped carefully around hers. Marcus had attempted multiple times to drag him out for food, sleep, basic hygiene. He had refused all three with single-minded stubbornness that bordered on obsessive. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the light, brown now instead of gold. The supernatural glow had faded when she lost consciousness. The seal was still badly cracked, visible fissures spreading through the magical structure, but temporarily holding against complete failure. "You performed surgery on me," she said. Her voice was rough and damaged from intubation during transport, each word clearly painful to produce. "You talked me through significant portions of it," Matthias replied. His own voice was hoarse from hours of not speaking, except to give medical updates to concerned pack members. "I do not remember that at all. You provided detailed surgical instructions until you finally passed out completely from blood loss. You probably saved your own life with medical knowledge I did not possess. Dr. Yates said your guidance was exceptional even while you were actively dying. She tried to sit up, gasped sharply at the acute pain that radiated from her surgical incisions. Matthias was immediately there, adjusting pillows with surprising gentleness for someone his size, helping her find a reasonably comfortable position that did not stress the fresh sutures holding her abdomen together. "What happened to the attackers?" she asked carefully, once she could breathe without agony. Comprehensive confessions within 30 minutes of Marcus beginning interrogation. Thompson ordered the hit directly, paid them $20,000 each. He is facing tribunal for attempted murder of a PAC member during official Luna trials. His political career is permanently over. His assets are frozen. His family is facing social exile. Good. She closed her eyes briefly, processing the information, then opened them again with sudden intensity that made the mate bond pulse between them. "You said you know what I am. Supreme Luna bloodline, magically sealed at age 5 by your father, Dr. Adrian Thorne, to protect you from military exploitation during the genetic enhancement experiments he was running. When he died protecting research data during the facility raid, the seal remained in place. It was partially lifted later by military medical staff to allow minimal wolf expression, but keeping your true alpha nature completely suppressed. When you refused military reenlistment 5 years ago, they let you go with explicit warnings to stay hidden, stay quiet, stay Omega. Someone has been monitoring you ever since to ensure you never became a potential threat to national security." Elena was completely silent for a long, suspended moment. Her heart rate increased on the monitor, beeping faster, then very quietly almost whispered, "How did you discover all of that?" "Military intelligence contacts from my service time. Colonel Hartley, my former commanding officer. He has connections that go deep into classified operations. Once I understood what signs to look for, the pieces assembled themselves relatively quickly. Your eyes flash gold under extreme stress. Gold eyes only occur in alpha bloodlines, never omega. Your scent carries alpha pheromone markers that omega wolves do not possess. The mate bond between us feels partially blocked, like something is actively suppressing normal wolf responses on your end. You are not omega. You never were. The seal just forced you to appear that way for your protection and theirs." "My wolf is—" She paused, searching for accurate words that could describe something she barely understood herself. "Different. Significantly stronger than omega wolves. More aggressive. More dominant. The seal kept her controlled and manageable, kept me safe from myself and from people who would exploit that power for weapons programs or political manipulation. If the seal breaks completely, I genuinely do not know what will happen. I have no training for this, no preparation, just raw power and no idea how to control it properly." "You will be extraordinarily powerful," Matthias said simply, stating fact rather than offering opinion or comfort. "One of the most powerful female alphas in North America, according to your genetic analysis from the military files. That is what will happen when the seal breaks. The question is not whether it will happen, but when, and whether you will have support when it does." "That is precisely what terrifies me most." Her voice cracked slightly with genuine vulnerability that she rarely allowed anyone to see. "I spent 5 years learning to be content with Omega status, learning to find purpose in service and healing rather than dominance and power, learning to be okay with being small and unimportant and invisible. If I become what my bloodline says I should be, I do not know who that person is anymore. I do not know if I even want to be her. What if power changes me? What if I become someone I do not recognize?" Matthias took her hand deliberately, threading his fingers through hers. The mate bond hummed between them with increasing strength and clarity, warm and steady like a heartbeat. "Then we figure it out together, step by step. Make mistakes, learn, adapt, because you are not remotely alone in this anymore. You have a mate who will stand beside you regardless of how powerful you become. You have a pack that chose you based on competence and character, not bloodline. Whatever happens when that seal breaks, we face it together." She looked at their joined hands. Her smaller one, scarred from years of medical work and military service, wrapped carefully in his larger one, marked with its own collection of scars from combat and command. Two broken people finding unexpected wholeness in connection. "The mate bond," she said softly. "You feel it clearly." "Yes, Have felt it since the precise moment our eyes met during Challenge 1, when you were covered in stage blood and defending your triage decisions. My wolf recognized you instantly. It was like being hit by lightning. I have never experienced anything remotely similar. I feel it too. It has been there constantly, getting progressively stronger every single day. I initially thought I was imagining it because omega wolves are not supposed to bond with alphas that way. The biological incompatibility should prevent recognition entirely, but it kept growing anyway, demanding acknowledgement. You are not omega, Matthias repeated gently, carefully. You never genuinely were. The seal just created that false impression. Your true nature was always there, just locked away. The mate bond sees truth, not magical disguises. What happens when the seal shatters completely? When there is nothing left holding back my true nature? Will I still be me? Will the power consume who I am? Matthias was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. I do not know precisely what will happen, but I know you. Your core identity is not defined by how much power you possess, but by how you choose to use it. You made the hardest choices in Challenge 1 because they were right, not because they were easy. You saved 12 children because it was necessary, not because it was politically advantageous. Power does not change character, it just reveals what was already there. You have remarkable faith in me. I have observed evidence. There is a difference. A soft knock interrupted them. Marcus entered carrying a tablet and looking professionally neutral in that way that meant complications were developing. Sir, Dr. Thorne, I apologize for interrupting recovery, but we have a significant situation that requires immediate attention. What kind of situation? Matthias asked, instantly shifting to command mode. Garrett Kane sent a private courier approximately 2 hours ago. Encrypted message addressed specifically to Dr. Thorne, marked urgent and confidential. Given the sensitive timing, I felt you should see it immediately. Elena took the tablet with her uninjured hand, the one not connected to IV lines, read the message displayed on screen. Her face went completely blank in that particular way Matthias had learned meant she was processing something with major strategic implications. What does it say? He asked, when she did not immediately volunteer the information. She handed him the tablet silently, her expression carefully controlled. Kane is offering me the Luna position at Redstone Pack, full authority over all medical services, unlimited budget, complete security guarantees including protection from whoever originally sealed my wolf and might still be monitoring me. He says Stonehaven is actively dying whether I want to acknowledge it or not, and I am wasting my considerable potential on a fundamentally doomed cause. I have exactly 48 hours to make a final decision. The room fell into heavy silence. Marcus looked between them, reading the sudden tension, understanding the stakes involved. Matthias read Kane's letter thoroughly, forcing himself to analyze it objectively, despite the way his wolf was howling in protest at the thought of losing their mate. It was remarkably generous. More than generous, it was genuinely compelling. Everything Elena could possibly want. A functional pack with 400 wolves and established infrastructure. Political backing from a strong alpha with good strategic instincts. Medical resources that would allow her to save thousands of lives instead of struggling to serve a few hundred with inadequate equipment. Resources and support that Stonehaven could never realistically provide no matter how hard they tried. And accepting would remove her from Stonehaven. From him. From the mate bond that was growing progressively stronger every hour despite the magical suppression still partially in place. He is not incorrect in his assessment, Matthias said finally, carefully. His voice was deliberately neutral, despite the way his wolf was howling in protest inside his mind. Stonehaven is genuinely dying. We are hemorrhaging population continuously. Resources stretched far beyond sustainable limits. Thompson is gone, but his entire political faction remains intact and actively hostile to reform. You would face constant sabotage and systematic opposition for every single change you attempted to implement. Kane can offer you immediate success versus years of grinding political warfare here. Is that your way of telling me I should accept his offer? Elena's voice was sharp, almost accusatory. It is my way of saying the choice is entirely yours to make freely. I will not trap you here simply because biology says we are mates. You have spent enough of your life trapped by circumstances completely beyond your control. Your father sealed your wolf without asking your permission. The military kept you under surveillance for years. I will not add another chain by using mate bond pressure to influence your decision. Elena stared at him with something between confusion and frustrated anger. You want me to refuse? I want you to make the decision that genuinely serves your goals and values. If that decision is Redstone, I understand completely. If it is here, I will be grateful. Either way, the choice is exclusively yours, and I will respect it. I will not manipulate you with mate bond obligations or emotional pressure." He stood and moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle, did not turn around, could not trust himself to maintain neutral expression if he looked at her. "For whatever it is worth, you would make an exceptional Luna. For any pack, Kane clearly recognizes your value. The question is not whether you are good enough for the position. The question is where you want to invest your energy fighting. That answer has to come from you, not from me." He left before she could respond. The door closed behind him with quiet finality. Elena sat alone in the hospital bed holding Kane's letter, feeling the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her chest. The mate bond hummed persistently, getting stronger despite her deliberate attempts to ignore it, more insistent, demanding acknowledgement and response. The seal on her wolf continued cracking incrementally with each passing hour. Soon it would shatter completely and catastrophically, and she had to decide. Safety and abundant resources at Redstone Pack with an alpha who respected her but sparked no mate bond recognition, or uncertainty and desperate struggle at Stonehaven with a young alpha who made her wolf sing but could promise nothing except hardship and grinding political warfare. The smart choice was glaringly obvious to anyone with basic strategic thinking. The right choice was significantly less clear to anyone with a heart. Elena spent the next 2 weeks in hospital recovery, thinking constantly, processing, weighing options with the same analytical precision she had applied to medical triage in Challenge 1. Matthias visited daily without fail, bringing coffee that was somehow always exactly right, the perfect temperature and strength, discussing pack business in careful detail, treating her as actual partner rather than patient, never once mentioning Kane's offer, never pressuring, never manipulating, just being solidly present in that particular way he had that made her feel both safe and challenged simultaneously. The mate bond kept growing stronger, regardless of her attempts to maintain professional distance. By day 10, Elena could feel it constantly, even when Matthias was not physically in the room. Warm, persistent pressure in her chest, awareness of his emotional state and physical location. Her wolf, the part of her that had been sealed and effectively silent for over 2 decades, was waking up fully and demanding recognition of the bond. And she was absolutely terrified of what that meant for her carefully constructed identity. On day 12, young wolves from the pack started visiting during afternoon hours when Matthias had official duties elsewhere. They brought flowers and handmade cards, shared stories about how Elena's free clinic had helped their families when official pack medicine had turned them away, explained how her victory in the trials had given them hope that merit actually mattered more than bloodline. A teenage girl named Sarah, daughter of borderland farmers, brought homemade cookies and a shy confession that Elena's example had inspired her to pursue medical training instead of accepting traditional Omega domestic roles. These visits accumulated like stones in a scale, each one adding weight to one side of Elena's impossible decision. On day 14, the night before trial results would be formally announced, Elena made her final choice. She discharged herself from the hospital against Dr. Yates's vigorous protests about wound-healing timelines and infection risks, drove her beat-up truck to the eastern overlook where you could see most of Stonehaven territory spread out below in the moonlight. It was not much to look at objectively. 200 square miles of Montana wilderness, 63 families gone in 5 years, their empty homes visible as dark shapes against the snow. Infrastructure visibly crumbling from decades of deferred maintenance. Young wolves leaving constantly for better opportunities elsewhere. But it was home, had been home for 5 years. These were her patients, her people. The wolves she had treated in the middle of the night for injuries and illnesses they could not afford to report officially. The families who had trusted her with their children's lives. Walking away meant abandoning them completely to a system that had already failed them repeatedly. And it meant walking away from Matthias, from the mate bond that sang louder every single day, from the partnership she had been too afraid to want until it was suddenly, terrifyingly within reach. She pulled out her phone, typed a response to Kane's letter with hands that shook slightly from emotion rather than injury. Professional, respectful, declining his extremely generous offer with genuine gratitude for the consideration and faith he had shown in her abilities. Then hit send before she could second-guess herself into paralysis. Her wolf purred deep approval, the sound resonating through her entire being. The seal cracked further, visible fissures spreading like lightning through glass. Soon there would be nothing whatsoever holding back her true power. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt something remarkably like freedom. The trial results ceremony was exactly noon the next day. Council chambers absolutely packed beyond fire safety capacity. All 9 original finalists stood in formal line, even though only 3 remained genuinely competitive. Behind them, pack members filled every available seat, pressed shoulder to shoulder. Standing room only extended out into the hallway. Everyone wanted to witness the conclusion of trials that had dominated pack politics for weeks and fundamentally challenged traditions that had stood for generations. Matthias entered wearing alpha formal attire, black suit tailored perfectly to his athletic build, no military medals or decorations despite earning multiple combat honors. He carried natural authority that made even skeptical observers shut up and pay attention. He took his position at the front of the room. His face was carved from stone, completely unreadable, giving nothing away. "The trial by selection is officially complete," he announced formally. 3 challenges over 3 weeks. Medical crisis management under resource constraints, tactical defense under hostile conditions, pack integration and political navigation against systematic opposition. All candidates performed with varying degrees of competence and grace under pressure. The Council and I have evaluated all results comprehensively and reached unanimous decision. He paused deliberately, allowing natural tension to build in the room. 3rd place, Vivienne Ashford, warrior class, demonstrated exceptional tactical skills, physical courage, and adaptability under pressure. Well done. Vivienne stepped forward with controlled grace, accepted her certificate of recognition with a slight bow, stepped back. Her face showed relief more than disappointment. She had never genuinely wanted to win, just wanted to prove herself capable on pure merit. That goal had been achieved. 2nd place, Sarah Chen, educator class, demonstrated administrative competence, coalition-building abilities, and remarkable political instincts for someone with minimal formal training. Excellent work. Sarah smiled genuinely, accepting her recognition with both hands. She had come significantly further than anyone had initially expected, including herself, made valuable connections throughout the pack, earned real respect from wolves who would have dismissed her automatically based on class status weeks ago. That was victory enough and more. Matthias's voice did not change tone or volume when announcing 1st place, maintained perfect neutrality. Dr. Elena Thorne, medical class, demonstrated tactical innovation under crisis conditions, moral courage under political pressure, exceptional competence across multiple domains, and demonstrated willingness to make powerful enemies for correct principles. 1st place by completely unanimous council decision with 0 dissenting votes. Thunderous applause erupted from young wolves throughout the gallery. Stunned silence from traditionalists who had never believed an Omega could legitimately win. Councilwoman Rodriguez smiled like she had won a substantial financial bet. Elder Hartman nodded solemn approval. Even the traditionalists who opposed her looked grudgingly impressed by the unanimous decision. Elena did not move initially, just stood there feeling the crushing weight of 200 wolves staring at her, waiting with held breath to see if she would claim the crown she had earned or walk away from responsibilities that terrified her. The moment stretched, suspended, everything balanced on her next words. She stepped forward. The room fell into absolute silence so complete you could hear individual heartbeats. "I accept," she said, clear, steady, unwavering. "I accept the Luna title and all responsibilities that accompany it. I accept the burden of leadership and service. I accept the partnership it represents. I accept this pack and all its challenges." More thunderous applause. Some genuine enthusiasm from young wolves who saw possibility. Some grudging acknowledgement from older wolves who valued competence despite preferring traditional bloodlines. Matthias's carefully neutral expression finally cracked slightly. Relief, joy, possessive satisfaction. His eyes showed everything his face tried to hide. The mate bond pulsed between them, warm and insistent. "Then by pack law and trial results, I formally claim you as my Luna. Do you accept this claim?" "I accept without reservation or conditions." The formal words, binding as any ceremony or contract, more binding because they were freely chosen by both parties with full knowledge of consequences. The mate bond snapped into full connection, complete strength with no more suppression, no more denial, no more barriers. Elena gasped audibly as the connection flooded through her entire nervous system like electricity, warmth that spread from her chest outward, recognition that resonated in her bones, belonging that felt like coming home after decades of exile. Her wolf howled with pure triumph, the sound echoing through her consciousness, and the seal shattered completely. Power exploded outward from her core like a tactical nuke detonating at ground zero. Her eyes flared brilliant gold, brighter than noon sun, sustained luminescence rather than brief flashes. Her scent changed instantly and dramatically, omega pheromones disappearing completely, replaced by pure apex predator musk that made every wolf in the room freeze in instinctive recognition of vastly superior power. The air itself seems to shimmer around her as supernatural energy radiated outward in visible waves. "Elena," Matthias said quietly, warning, support, anchoring her to reality while her world turned upside down. She looked directly at him with those blazing gold eyes. Let him see what she truly was without any remaining disguise or suppression, who she had always been underneath 2 decades of magical imprisonment. Supreme Luna, apex predator, one of the most powerful female alphas in North America, finally released after 22 years of forced captivity. Power that had been locked away since childhood now flowed freely through every cell of her body. "I am ready," she said firmly, voice resonating with supernatural authority that made lesser wolves lower their eyes automatically. For partnership, for power, for whatever came next. Together. The transformation was absolute and undeniable. Elena stood in the center of the packed council chambers, supreme Luna power radiating from her in visible waves that made the air shimmer and distort. Her eyes burned brilliant gold with sustained supernatural luminescence that cast actual light into shadowed corners. Every wolf in the room felt it instinctively at a cellular level. This was not Omega. This was not even standard Beta. This was Apex Predator, supreme Luna bloodline manifesting for the first time in decades. The kind of concentrated power that appeared maybe once in a generation if you were lucky. Matthias moved to her side immediately, not to control or contain the power, but to anchor and support her through the overwhelming transition. Their mate bond was fully active now, no longer blocked by magical seals or deliberate suppression. The connection between them hummed with perfect harmony, 2 frequencies finding resonance. "Breathe," he said quietly, for her ears only despite the crowded room. "You are safe here. You are home. Let the power settle naturally through your system. Do not fight what you are. Just let it be." Elena focused on his voice, used it as an anchor point, while her wolf adjusted to 22 years of brutal suppression suddenly being completely removed. The transition was overwhelming, but not painful. More like removing heavy chains she had worn so long she had forgotten what freedom of movement felt like. Her body remembered things her conscious mind had never known, instincts rising from genetic memory that predated civilization itself. Her breathing steadied gradually. The visible power aura dimmed slightly as she gained basic control over the output. Her eyes remained brilliant gold, but the intensity became manageable rather than blinding everyone within visual range. She looked directly at the assembled pack members with newfound confidence. Some faces showed genuine awe and respect. Some showed fear that would need to be carefully managed. A calculating few showed the familiar expression of people already planning how to exploit this development for maximum political advantage. "I am Luna," she stated clearly, with supernatural authority that resonated in the bones of everyone present. Not asking for acknowledgement, declaring established fact. "I earned this position through demonstrated merit across 3 comprehensive trials. My bloodline does not negate that achievement. My power does not invalidate the competition. I am exactly who I have always been underneath artificial suppression, just finally able to be completely honest about it." Elder Hartman stood slowly, aged joints creaking with arthritis, but his voice carried clearly. "The Council formally recognizes Luna Elena Thorne. Let it be recorded in official pact documentation with my seal as witness." Councilwoman Rodriguez smiled with sharp satisfaction that suggested successful political maneuvering. She had bet correctly on the outsider candidate against traditionalist opposition. Welcome officially, Luna. Stonehaven Pack is extremely fortunate to have you despite our previous resistance to change. The ceremony concluded with formal contract signing. Elena's hand was perfectly steady as she marked her signature beside Matthias's bold script. Binding. Permanent. Chosen freely by both parties with complete awareness of implications and costs. As they exited the chambers together, Marcus materialized beside Matthias with his characteristic silent efficiency that made him invaluable as second-in-command. Sir, we have a rapidly developing tactical situation. Redstone Pack is mobilizing in significant force on our northern border. Heavy troop movements, organized supply columns. This is not reconnaissance patrol. This looks like preparation for sustained military operation. Matthias's jaw tightened visibly. Kane is taking Elena's refusal personally. He is escalating to force the issue. Analysis suggests exactly that, sir. Our intelligence indicates he has successfully formed temporary alliances with Silverpine and Northcrest packs. Combined force estimates approximately 800 wolves. They are positioning for coordinated three-direction assault. Timeline estimate? 48 hours maximum until they achieve full operational positioning. Elena stepped closer, already shifting mental gears into tactical mode despite still adjusting to her newly released power. 800 versus our 200 wolves. Those are catastrophically terrible odds for any conventional defense strategy. Completely agreed, Matthias said, which is precisely why we will not attempt conventional defense. We implement the exact same doctrine you designed for Murphy Farm hostage rescue, but scaled up significantly for extended siege conditions. Fortified central defense, systematic attrition warfare, relentless psychological pressure. Make occupations so unbearably costly they choose voluntary withdrawal over continued operation. Over the next 48 hours, Stonehaven Pack transformed systematically into a military fortress. The outer territories were methodically abandoned in controlled withdrawal. Families relocated to central compound with organized efficiency. Livestock herded into specially protected areas with overlapping defensive coverage. Every piece of valuable infrastructure that could not be reliably held against superior numbers was deliberately destroyed to deny resources to enemy forces. Bridges burned down to their stone foundations, wells poisoned with chemical compounds that would dissipate in weeks but render water undrinkable immediately. Food storage facilities emptied completely, supplies relocated or deliberately spoiled. The message carved into the landscape was brutally clear and unambiguous. Come and take what you want, but you will find only ashes and scorched earth. Matthias coordinated the entire evacuation operation with precision learned through multiple combat deployments. Elena organized comprehensive medical preparations, converting the main lodge basement into a fully equipped trauma ward capable of handling mass casualty events. Supplies stockpiled for worst-case scenarios. Every wolf with even rudimentary first aid training was systematically taught combat medicine fundamentals. Triage procedures adapted from military field hospitals. Tourniquet application techniques. Hemostatic agent proper usage. Treating tension pneumothorax with needle decompression, maintaining airway in unconscious casualties. By the time the massive invasion force finally arrived at Stonehaven borders, every wolf was ready. The coordinated attack began at dawn on Monday morning with temperatures hovering around freezing. 800 wolves organized into 3 massive military columns converging simultaneously from 3 cardinal directions: north, east, west. Textbook combined arms assault designed specifically to overwhelm through superior numbers and prevent effective resistance through simultaneous pressure. They found completely empty territory, burned farmhouses still smoking from recent destruction, poisoned water sources marked with warning symbols, no resistance whatsoever at the traditional border markers, just systematically scorched earth and a large carved wooden sign positioned prominently at what used to be the main territorial entrance. Molon Labe, come and take them. Ancient Spartan phrase from Thermopylae. Military tradition spanning thousands of years, carried forward by warriors who understood that some things were worth dying to protect. Garrett Kane stood at the border marker staring at that sign for several long moments, genuine respect flickering across his features despite the military confrontation. Then he smiled slightly despite himself and the circumstances. Matthias Blackclaw was speaking Kane's language fluently. Warrior-to-warrior communication. This would be decided through pure strength and absolute determination, not through political maneuvering or diplomatic compromise. He keyed his tactical radio with practiced efficiency. All units, this is Alpha Command. Primary target confirmed as Central Compound. Implement standard siege protocols exactly as rehearsed. Converge formation and establish complete containment. Move out. The siege began in deadly earnest. Day 1. The combined invasion forces established comprehensive perimeter around Stonehaven's fortified Central Compound. 800 wolves in meticulously organized military formation spread across defensible positions. They methodically set up proper field camps with organized supply depots, command tents, rotating guard schedules, and field medical facilities. This was clearly not an improvised opportunistic raid. This was a carefully planned military operation that had been months in detailed preparation. Day 2. Redstone. Forward elements probed the compound defenses, systematically looking for obvious tactical weaknesses or vulnerable entry points. They found absolutely none. The compound was physically small compared to their numbers, but professionally fortified by someone with extensive military engineering knowledge. Clear, overlapping fields of fire extending 300 yards in all directions. Defensive positions creating effective kill zones with interlocking coverage. Pre-positioned obstacles and barriers. No immediately exploitable vulnerabilities visible to tactical reconnaissance. Day 3. Kane personally demanded immediate surrender through radio broadcast, offered remarkably generous terms considering his overwhelming numerical advantage, full pack absorption with no punishment for initial resistance, guaranteed leadership positions for current administration, financial compensation for property losses. From pure military perspective, the offer was actually quite reasonable and possibly worth serious consideration. Matthias's response was broadcast on the exact frequency he knew Kane would be monitoring closely. His voice was calm, clear, absolutely unyielding. Stonehaven Pack will hold this ground against all threats. If you genuinely want our territory, you are welcome to come and take it by force of arms. We will be waiting. Day 4 through 7. Stonehaven sniper teams engaged enemy positions with systematic surgical precision, not attempting lethal kills that would escalate the conflict into full warfare, instead targeting extremities with careful aim. Arms, legs, shoulders, causing injuries that produce significant pain and temporary disability but remain survivable with proper medical treatment. Elena had designed this specific doctrine after extensive research into siege warfare psychology and resource logistics. Dead enemies created martyrs who inspired revenge and hardened overall resistance. Wounded enemies created massive resource drains on medical facilities and systematically lowered morale throughout enemy ranks. Every single injured wolf required immediate evacuation from combat zones, extensive medical treatment consuming limited supplies, and ongoing care that diverted trained personnel from combat operations. 90 casualties accumulated over 4 days, absolute 0 deaths. The cumulative psychological effect on the attacking forces was substantial and continuously increasing. Wolves started moving with visible caution, taking longer to complete basic tasks, looking over shoulders constantly. Sleep quality declined measurably as stress accumulated. Day 8. Weather turned dramatically and decisively. Early Montana winter system bringing sustained freezing rain mixed with sleet. Ambient temperature dropped sharply to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind chill calculations made it feel closer to single digits. Exposed skin developed frostbite within minutes without proper protection. The invasion forces were camped in deliberately exposed positions with only minimal improvised shelter hastily constructed. They had confidently expected quick, overwhelming victory, had not prepared properly for extended siege operations in genuine winter conditions. Stonehaven wolves remained perfectly comfortable in heated buildings with industrial generators providing reliable power. Hot, nutritious meals served regularly in communal kitchen. Immediate medical care available for any health issues. The brutal contrast was stark and clearly visible to everyone involved on both sides. Day 9 through 11. Stonehaven night raid teams hit vulnerable supply lines with devastating precision. small units that Marcus personally led using advanced ranger tactics adapted from Afghanistan operations, equipment systematically stolen, food storage facilities destroyed with thermite charges, medical supply caches contaminated with chemical agents, water purification systems sabotaged, forcing invading forces onto progressively shorter rations while simultaneously dealing with cold injuries and declining health. Elena participated directly in several raids using her newly released Supreme Luna powers. She moved through darkness with supernatural speed and strength, sensory capabilities far exceeding normal wolves. She could smell enemy positions from hundreds of yards away, hear whispered conversations through walls. Her physical strength allowed her to carry equipment loads that would require 3 normal wolves. The power was intoxicating and terrifying simultaneously. Day 12. Silver Pine Pack officially withdrew their forces after emergency Alpha Council vote. Their leadership cited excessive casualties from ongoing sniper operations, unfavorable environmental conditions making extended siege operationally unsustainable, and fundamental questions about whether territorial expansion was worth continued blood price. The real underlying reason was considerably simpler. This was fundamentally Kane's personal grievance, not a genuine threat to Silver Pine interests, and they categorically refused to continue bleeding their wolves for someone else's pride. 200 wolves pulled out in organized convoy withdrawal. The mathematical odds shifted to 600 versus 200. Improved situation for Stonehaven, but still brutally challenging. Kane was visibly furious when Silver Pine departed, publicly called their alpha a coward lacking commitment, threatened to remember this betrayal during future political negotiations, received nothing except a middle finger gesture from the Silver Pine convoy commander as vehicles drove away. Day 13. Northcrest. Pack leadership formally requested diplomatic parley to negotiate terms for complete withdrawal. They were clearly done with this operation. Kane overruled them forcefully, using alliance treaty obligations and sustained political pressure. Northcrest forces stayed in position, but their practical commitment was obviously wavering badly. They were just going through minimal motions while waiting desperately for any acceptable excuse to leave. Day 14. Federal Supernatural Territories Commission. Inspector arrived in official government capacity. Someone had filed detailed formal complaint about potential accord violations regarding interpack warfare. Any military operation exceeding 14 consecutive days triggered absolutely mandatory federal oversight regardless of pack wishes. Inspector Sarah Chen was consummate professional, mid-40s, thoroughly competent, completely impossible to intimidate through normal political pressure. She methodically documented everything with photographs and written records, interviewed both sides extensively, collected comprehensive evidence. Her official presence fundamentally changed the entire tactical and political dynamic. This was now a formal federal case with serious legal implications extending far beyond simple pack politics. Garrett Kane found himself expertly trapped in an impossible position. He could not withdraw his forces without appearing catastrophically weak after investing 2 weeks and sustaining substantial casualties. He could not escalate military operations without risking severe federal sanctions that could destroy Redstone's political standing. He could not maintain indefinite siege with winter weather progressively worsening and remaining Allied forces clearly ready to mutiny at first opportunity. He desperately needed resolution, fast, clean, something that salvaged his damaged pride while ending this increasingly disastrous operation before it completely destroyed his carefully built reputation. Day 15. Kane requested formal parley under ancient pack law traditions. Single combat between alphas. Wolf form only. Fight continues until clear submission. No deliberately lethal strikes. Federal inspector serves as official witness to ensure complete legitimacy. Winner claims all disputed territory. Loser withdraws all forces immediately and permanently cedes territorial claims. The parley happened at carefully surveyed neutral ground exactly between territories. Both alphas attended personally. Marcus and Elena flanked Matthias in positions of honor. Kane brought his beta and senior warrior commanders. "Blackclaw," Kane said without wasting time on diplomatic pleasantries, "this siege is accomplishing nothing except mutual suffering and resource destruction. I propose we settle this conflict the traditional way our ancestors established. Single combat, Wolf form, fight to submission, no killing strikes. Federal inspector witnesses to ensure complete legitimacy. Winner takes absolutely everything. Matthias studied Kane carefully with tactical assessment. The man was 38 years old, absolute prime physical condition, professional warrior with decades of extensive combat experience. No visible injuries, no apparent limitations. He would possess significant advantages in sustained physical combat. Matthias was 34, had accumulated old injuries from Iraq and Afghanistan deployments that never healed properly despite best medical care. Shrapnel fragments still embedded in his spine causing chronic pain. Knees that sounded like gravel grinding together during movement. He would be at measurable disadvantage in any prolonged fight. Marcus started to object immediately. Matthias silenced him with a single sharp look. Elena's voice was tight with barely suppressed emotion. This is objectively terrible strategy. Kane is younger, completely uninjured, and possesses 4 additional years of professional combat training and experience. Every tactical analysis indicates the odds heavily favor him. You do not have to accept this. The odds favor him in literally any scenario we can construct, Matthias replied with absolute calm. Direct assault suicide. Continued siege gradually weakens us. Diplomatic negotiation from weak position fails. This single combat option is genuinely our best realistic path to ending the siege without additional casualties. I formally accept his challenge. Matthias, please no, Elena said, not speaking as Luna making tactical assessment, speaking as mate facing potential loss. You do not have to sacrifice yourself for this. He looked directly at her. The mate bond thrummed powerfully between them, carrying wordless communication. Yes, I actually do have to do this. This is what alphas fundamentally do. We deliberately stand between our pack and danger, even when that danger might kill us, especially when it might kill us. He turned back to Kane. I accept your formal challenge. 24 hours from this moment. Neutral ground. Wolf form exclusively. Fight to submission. Federal inspector witnesses. Winner takes all disputed territory, and the loser withdraws all claims permanently. That night, Matthias could not sleep, which was unfortunately his normal state. He found himself walking the compound perimeter at 3 a.m., checking defensive positions one final time with meticulous attention to detail, making absolutely sure everything was properly prepared in case he lost tomorrow and someone else needed to continue leading the desperate defense. Elena found him at the eastern watchtower. She did not speak initially, just stood silently beside him looking out at the siege lines and the territory beyond. You are planning for your death, she said finally. Flat statement, not question. I am planning for all realistic contingencies. That is what competent commanders do. That is what commanders who do not expect to survive do. She grabbed his arm, forced him to face her directly. Kane is younger, faster, stronger, completely uninjured. Every objective tactical analysis says you lose this fight decisively, so why accept when alternatives exist? Because refusing means the siege continues indefinitely. More weeks of our people living under constant threat and stress. More opportunities for catastrophic things to go wrong. More chances that someone I care about gets seriously injured or killed because I was too proud to risk myself. He covered her hand with his. Sometimes the fastest way to end a war is through personal sacrifice. That is just tactical reality. I did not accept the mate bond just to watch you die in ritual combat 48 hours later. Then you better make absolutely sure I survive somehow, Matthias said with slight smile. Because I am going to need my Supreme Luna in my corner tomorrow, not falling apart emotionally. Elena pulled him close. They held each other in the darkness, feeling the mate bond pulse steadily between them like shared heartbeat. Come back to me, she whispered against his chest. Always, he promised. I am too stubborn to die. Ask anyone who served with me. They stood together until the cold became unbearable, and Elena finally pulled him back inside to actual warmth. The combat arena was neutral ground carefully surveyed by Federal Inspector Chen to ensure absolutely no advantage to either side. Flat frozen earth, no cover, no obstacles, no terrain features that could be exploited. Just completely open ground where 2 wolves would fight for territorial supremacy. Both packs gathered as required witnesses. 800 wolves total. The atmosphere was electric with tension so thick you could practically see it. Matthias arrived in simple practical clothing, stripped down to absolute basics. His body showed every year of hard living and visible scars. combat wounds, surgical marks from injuries that statistically should have killed him. The lean, functional muscle of someone who maintained fitness through rigid discipline but could not reverse time's accumulated effects. Cain arrived in Redstone formal uniform, deliberately making a public ceremony of removing each piece with theatrical precision. His body was absolutely perfect. No visible scars, no apparent weakness, 40 years old and built specifically for dominance through violence. They shifted simultaneously. The transformation was brutal as always, bones breaking and reforming in different configurations, muscle tearing and rebuilding in new arrangements, human consciousness merging with wolf instinct in ways that biology should not allow but happened anyway because that is what wolves were. Cain's wolf was massive and intimidating. Brown coat, battle-scarred muzzle, eyes cold and calculating. This was professional killer in animal form, no question. Matthias's wolf was slightly larger, but graying noticeably at the muzzle. Black coat, lean rather than bulky, moved with veteran's economy, absolutely no wasted motion. Every gesture calculated for maximum efficiency. Inspector Chen raised her hand officially. Combat proceeds until one combatant submits or cannot continue. Killing strikes are absolutely prohibited. This is recognized combat under ancient pack law. Results are binding on all parties. Begin. The fight began without ceremony. Cain charged immediately with overwhelming aggression, testing reactions. Fast, brutal, expecting to overwhelm through sheer violent power. Matthias sidestepped with minimal movement, made Cain overextend fractionally, countered with quick bite to exposed shoulder. Not deep, just establishing he was not helpless prey waiting to be dominated. Cain spun faster than Matthias expected, caught Matthias's foreleg firmly in his jaws, applied crushing pressure, trying to break bone and cripple mobility. Matthias twisted into the bite instead of pulling away. Counterintuitive but tactically effective. Used the momentum to throw Cain off balance. Both wolves tumbled across frozen ground. They separated, circled warily, both bleeding now. First exchange is complete. Elena watched from the sideline, every muscle tense. She had analyzed combat scenarios extensively. This was not going well. Cain was measurably faster. Matthias's old war wounds were already obviously limiting his movement. Left rear leg favoring where shrapnel had damaged muscle years ago. Round 2, Cain pressed hard with combination attacks, feints followed by strikes from unexpected angles, overwhelming Matthias's defenses through speed and energy. Landed vicious bite to Matthias's flank, deep enough to cause significant blood loss, forced him backward toward perimeter. Matthias was limping now, the old injury opening under stress. He could not match Cain's speed, could not outlast his endurance. The mathematics were turning catastrophically bad. Round 3, Cain sensed victory approaching, had Matthias defensive, bleeding, limping badly, visibly exhausted. Cain charged with full weight, trying to knock Matthias down, get him on the ground where size and strength would finish it. Matthias went down hard, hit frozen earth with bone-jarring impact. Cain immediately on top, massive weight pinning him, jaws going for throat, the killing position. Then Matthias did something that defied logic and training. He deliberately dislocated his own shoulder, twisted his body at an anatomically impossible angle, sacrificing joint integrity for positioning. The shoulder popped with audible crack that carried across the arena, ligaments tearing, capsule rupturing, but it let him roll. Slip out from under Cain's weight using the unnatural flexibility from dislocated joint. Cain turned, confused, found Matthias already behind him, jaws clamping down on his spine at lower lumbar vertebrae. Precise medical knowledge applied directly to combat. Matthias bit down with everything he had remaining, not trying to kill, trying to disable, applying precise pressure to specific nerve clusters. Cain screamed, high-pitched, agonized, tried to stand, could not. Rear legs were not responding. The bite had disrupted nerve transmission. Matthias released, stepped back, limping badly, shoulder hanging wrong, bleeding from multiple wounds, but standing. Cain tried to rise, fell, tried again. Could not manage coordination. The nerve damage was temporary, but in the moment, completely catastrophic. Matthias limped to where Cain lay struggling, stood over him, not attacking, just waiting. The meaning was absolutely clear. Submit or I finish this. Cain's wolf looked up at the battered alpha standing above him, saw absolute refusal to quit despite overwhelming odds. Kane showed his throat, ultimate surrender. Inspector Chen called it immediately. Combat to Alpha Matthias Blackclaw, Stonehaven sovereignty upheld under ancient pack law. The compound erupted in celebration. Young wolves howling victory, warriors celebrating with weapons raised. Elena was already running with comprehensive medical kit. Matthias shifted back to human. Collapsed immediately. Multiple broken ribs, dislocated shoulder, deep lacerations, possible internal bleeding. She stabilized him on site with practiced efficiency. Marcus helped load him onto stretcher. They evacuated to medical facility within minutes. Kane shifted back, humiliated, but alive. His beta helped him to vehicles. Nerve function was already returning. He would walk, but his pride was comprehensively destroyed. Redstone forces withdrew within hours. The siege was over. 3 months later, winter had fully settled over Stonehaven territory, with heavy snow covering everything in pristine white. The battle scars had healed. The territory was visibly recovering. Matthias had recovered slowly from combat injuries. His limp was permanent now. His shoulder had limited range permanently. He would never fight again. But he was alive, and that was what mattered. Elena was officially crowned Luna in an elaborate ceremony that drew witnesses from 12 allied packs. Her supreme Luna bloodline was publicly acknowledged. No more hiding, no more suppression. The changes came rapidly once she had actual authority. Medical expansion. Universal health care for all pack members regardless of rank or class. Genetic screening programs to prevent tragedies. Youth education initiatives. Council reforms adding Omega and Beta representatives. Population stabilization. Young wolves staying, families returning. Late one evening, Matthias and Elena stood on the balcony of the pack house looking out over territory they had fought so hard to protect. "We did it," Elena said quietly, "against impossible odds. You did it, your strategies, your reforms. Our partnership did it." She leaned against him. The mate bond hummed contentment. "I could not have done this without you." They stood watching snowfall. Two damaged veterans who found each other, who chose partnership over destiny. "I love you," Matthias said. "First time since Rebecca died. I love you too, which terrifies me." He kissed her. The mate bond surged. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now we keep building, keep fighting, keep choosing each other every day." "I can do that." Inside the pack house, celebration continued. 200 wolves depending on them. It was not perfect. Challenges remained, but they faced it together. Alpha and Luna, mates, partners, building something meaningful. And that was enough. Actually, it was everything. Epilogue. 6 months after the siege, Stonehaven Pack had transformed so completely that visitors from Allied territories barely recognized it. The population had grown to 275 wolves and was still climbing steadily. Returning families who had fled years ago came back when they heard about Elena's comprehensive reforms. New wolves arrived from other territories, attracted by Matthias's reputation for fair leadership and Elena's revolutionary healthcare system. Young wolves who had been planning to leave for cities decided to stay and build futures here instead. The territory felt genuinely alive again, vibrant with possibility and hope instead of slow decline. Elena stood in the newly expanded medical facility, reviewing patient charts on a late Tuesday afternoon. The building had tripled in size through combination of federal infrastructure grants she had expertly navigated and alliance partnership funding from Redstone and Silverpine, state-of-the-art diagnostic equipment that would make urban hospitals jealous, fully stocked pharmacy with medications for everything from routine infections to chronic conditions, private examination rooms, proper surgical suite with backup power systems, everything she had dreamed of creating when she first arrived at Stonehaven 5 years ago, believing she could make difference through medicine alone. Caleb Thompson was in full remission, his genetic disorder responding better than anyone dared hope to the experimental treatments. All 12 children with Fenwick's syndrome were receiving cutting-edge care through collaborative program with 3 research hospitals. Several were showing dramatic improvement. 2 might achieve complete cure within 18 months, according to latest projections. The borderland wolves who had relied on Elena's mobile clinic for years now had access to comprehensive health care through the expanded main facility. No one was turned away for inability to pay. No one was denied treatment based on rank or class. It was revolutionary for pack medicine, and other territories were starting to take notice and implement similar systems. But the most significant change in Elena's life was not professional. It was deeply, terrifyingly, wonderfully personal. She was 12 weeks pregnant with Matthias's child. The pregnancy had been complete surprise. Supreme Luna bloodlines were notoriously difficult to conceive, according to all genetic research. The power levels interfered with normal reproduction somehow. Most Supreme Lunas historically remained childless or had only one child after decades of trying. But apparently the mate bond between two alpha bloodlines created optimal conditions. Her body had adapted almost immediately after the seal broke, and her power stabilized. She had discovered it 6 weeks ago, when her normally perfect sense of smell became hypersensitive to the point of ridiculousness. Coffee made her nauseous. The scent of raw meat sent her running for the bathroom. Marcus's cologne triggered instant headaches. She had run the pregnancy test herself in the clinic after hours, alone, staring at the positive result for 20 minutes trying to process the implications. Telling Matthias had been simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. He had been in his office reviewing territory security reports when she walked in and simply blurted out, "I'm pregnant," with zero preamble or context. He had stared at her for 5 full seconds, face completely unreadable, then pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe and whispered "thank you" over and over against her hair, like she had given him the most precious gift imaginable, which maybe she had. Now at 12 weeks, the pregnancy was starting to show if you knew what to look for. Her scrubs were getting snug around the middle. Her energy levels fluctuated wildly between normal and exhausted. The morning sickness had mostly passed, but certain smells still triggered nausea, and she was absolutely terrified she would be terrible mother despite Matthias's constant reassurances. She heard him before she saw him. His footsteps were distinctive, slightly uneven from permanent combat injury. The door opened, and Matthias entered her office, carrying 2 cups of herbal tea that she could actually tolerate during pregnancy. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting 1 cup on her desk within easy reach. "Tired. Slightly nauseous, despite it supposedly being past the first trimester danger zone. Overwhelmed by patient load. Terrified I will be completely incompetent mother who permanently damages our child through terrible parenting." She took sip of tea. Perfect temperature. He always knew somehow. "You know, the usual." "You will be an amazing mother," Matthias said with absolute conviction. He moved behind her chair and started massaging her shoulders with careful pressure. "You fought off 2 assassins while bleeding to death. You redesigned an entire pack healthcare system from scratch against massive political opposition. You negotiated alliance treaties with 3 different territories. You can definitely handle 1 small human." Small humans are surprisingly challenging according to literally everyone who has ever had one. They do not sleep. They require constant attention. They are fragile and terrifying. What if I drop the baby? What if I feed it wrong? What if it cries and I cannot figure out why? Then we figure it out together through trial and error, like every parent in human history. We will make mistakes. We will survive those mistakes. The baby will survive those mistakes. It will be fine. Elena leaned back into his touch, drawing strength from physical contact and mate bond that hummed contentedly between them. 6 months of being fully bonded mates had only deepened their connection. She could feel his emotions now as clearly as her own. Current state, calm, confident, deeply content, slightly amused by her spiral into parenting anxiety. "I have been thinking extensively about succession planning," she said, changing subject to something slightly less emotionally overwhelming. "About our child and what their life will be like. Our baby will have both of our alpha bloodlines, your strength and tactical thinking, my supreme Luna power and healing abilities. That kind of concentrated genetic power is extremely rare, potentially unprecedented in modern pack history." "Are you worried about that?" Matthias asked carefully, hands still working the tension from her shoulders. "I am absolutely determined our child will never experience what I did," Elena said firmly. "No magical suppression. No hiding their true nature. No forcing them to pretend to be something they are not for safety or political convenience. Just complete acceptance and proper training to use their power responsibly and ethically." "Agreed completely, and without reservation." Matthias came around to face her, taking her hands in his. "Our child will grow up free to be exactly who they are. That is non-negotiable promise. We will teach them to use their power to protect and serve, not to dominate or control. We will show them through our example what ethical leadership actually looks like. And if they turn out to be even more powerful than me, Then both of us combined? What then? Then we teach them that with great power comes great responsibility, and we love them unconditionally while they figure out who they want to be, same as any parent. They sat quietly for a moment, just being together. Then Elena smiled slightly. I am also terrified they will have your stubborn streak combined with my argumentative nature. That combination will be absolutely impossible to manage. Probably, Matthias agreed cheerfully. But they will also have your compassion and my tactical thinking, your brilliant mind and my discipline, your healing abilities and my protective instincts. They will be extraordinary in all the best ways. You sound remarkably confident about that. I am confident in us as partners and parents. The rest we will figure out as we go. Elena stood carefully, placing his hand against her still relatively flat stomach. Hello in there. Your father is unreasonably optimistic. You should know that about him. Also, please stop making me nauseous at random times. It is quite inconvenient. Matthias laughed and pulled her close. They stood like that for several minutes, hands resting on the small evidence of new life they had created together. A sharp knock interrupted their moment. Marcus entered without waiting for permission, which meant something important required immediate attention. Sir, Luna, we have a situation that requires your attention. Silverpine Pack Alpha has arrived unexpectedly requesting urgent meeting. He brought significant delegation and formal gifts. This appears to be diplomatic visit, not security threat. Matthias and Elena exchanged quick look. Silverpine had been part of the invasion force 6 months ago. What were they doing here now? They found Silverpine Alpha, James Hartley, waiting in the formal receiving room with delegation of 6 wolves and an impressive array of wrapped packages that suggested serious diplomatic intentions. Alpha Blackclaw, Elena Thorne, Hartley said with respectful nod. Thank you for receiving me on short notice. I come to formally apologize for Silverpine's participation in the siege and to propose comprehensive alliance agreement. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Hartley explained that he had been pressured into joining Kane's coalition against his better judgment. Watching Stonehaven's tactical defense and political reforms over past 6 months had impressed him deeply. He wanted formal alliance including trade agreements, mutual defense pact, and collaborative healthcare program based on Elena's model. Your Luna has created something revolutionary, Hartley said directly to Elena. Universal healthcare regardless of rank. Genetic screening preventing future tragedies. Trauma-informed care for veterans. Other packs are taking notice. Silverpine wants to implement similar systems and would greatly benefit from your expertise and guidance. Elena negotiated terms carefully. Silverpine would provide funding and resources. Elena would train their medical staff and help design their program. Stonehaven would receive percentage of any cost savings achieved. Both packs would benefit. By evening, they had signed preliminary agreements. Silverpine departed, promising detailed contracts within 2 weeks. That was unexpected, Matthias said once they were alone again. That was validation, Elena corrected. Proof that what we are building here matters beyond just our territory. We are creating model that other packs want to emulate. That is how you create lasting change, not through force, but through demonstrated success. Over the following weeks, more diplomatic visits arrived. Northcrest Pack wanted to discuss healthcare partnerships. A pack from Wyoming requested Elena as consultant for their genetic screening program. Federal Supernatural Territories Commission invited both Matthias and Elena to present at national conference about innovative pack governance models. Stonehaven was no longer dying forgotten territory. It was becoming a model for how packs could adapt and thrive in modern era. Elena's pregnancy progressed smoothly into second trimester. The nausea finally disappeared completely. Her energy levels stabilized. The baby started moving, tiny flutters at first, then gradually stronger kicks. Matthias loved feeling the baby move, his hand constantly on her growing belly during quiet moments. They transformed one of the pack house spare rooms into nursery together, painting walls soft neutral colors, assembling furniture with slightly more difficulty than instructions suggested, hanging curtains, creating safe, warm space for their child. The pack threw surprise baby shower that made Elena cry actual tears. Gifts from everyone, handmade blankets, tiny clothes, practical supplies, cards expressing hope and excitement for future. At 20 weeks, they learned through ultrasound they were having a daughter. Matthias looked stunned, then delighted, then terrified in rapid succession. A daughter, he kept repeating, like he could not quite believe it. We are having a daughter. I am going to be a girl dad. I know nothing about raising girls. You will learn, Elena assured him with amusement. Same way we are learning everything else, through doing it and making mistakes and trying again. They chose name carefully after weeks of discussion. Alexandra Rebecca. Alexandra after Elena's mother who had died when Elena was young. Rebecca after Matthias's late wife, who had loved him through his darkest times, honoring the women who shaped them. At 30 weeks, Elena reluctantly reduced her clinical hours. The pregnancy was healthy, but carrying child with combined alpha bloodlines took significant physical toll. She tired more easily, needed more rest. Her Supreme Luna healing kept her healthy, but even supernatural biology had limits. Matthias became impossibly protective, hovering, worrying about everything, making sure she ate properly, ensuring she rested adequately, threatening anyone who stressed her with creative violence. You do realize I am powerful Supreme Luna who can take care of myself, right? Elena asked, after he physically carried her out of the clinic when she refused to leave on time. Yes, Matthias agreed. I also realize you are carrying our daughter and will not rest properly unless I make you. Someone has to be reasonable parent. That implies you are the reasonable one. Evidence suggests otherwise. I am selectively reasonable. It is my most annoying quality. At 37 weeks, Elena woke at 2 a.m. with contractions. Matthias called Dr. Yates, assembled medical team, and stayed by her side through entire 14-hour labor. It was exhausting, painful, terrifying, and absolutely beautiful all at once. Alexandra Rebecca Blackclaw was born at 4 p.m. weighing 7 pounds 6 ounces. Perfect, healthy, already showing signs of powerful alpha nature in her eyes that occasionally flashed gold even as newborn. Matthias held his daughter with hands that had killed enemy combatants and performed emergency surgery and signed execution orders. Now those same hands cradled tiny, fragile life with infinite gentleness. He looked at Elena with wonder and love and gratitude that made mate bonds sing. We made this, he whispered. We made actual whole person. Biology technically did most of the work, Elena pointed out, exhausted but happy. We made this, he repeated firmly. Thank you. 2 months after Alexandra's birth, Stonehaven celebrated Spring Festival, first major pack gathering since siege. 800 wolves attended, including visiting delegations from 12 allied territories. Children played in festival grounds. Adults socialized. Food and music and laughter filled the air. It felt like genuine community celebration, instead of desperate attempt to pretend everything was fine. Matthias and Elena stood on Packhouse balcony, watching their people celebrate. Alexandra slept peacefully in Elena's arms, tiny and perfect. We did it, Elena said softly. We actually saved this pack. Population growing, territory thriving, children have futures here. We did it. You did it, Matthias corrected gently. We did it together, Elena insisted. Your leadership, my reforms, our partnership. That is what saved Stonehaven. Not individual brilliance, but genuine collaboration. Below them, Marcus was organizing children's games with surprising patience. Young couples danced together. Elders told stories. The pack was alive, thriving, building future instead of mourning past. I love you, Matthias said, pulling Elena close while carefully supporting their sleeping daughter. I love both of you more than I thought possible after Rebecca. Thank you for giving me second chance at family and happiness. I love you too, Elena replied. Thank you for seeing past Omega Facade to who I really was. Thank you for choosing me despite all complications. Thank you for building this life with me. They kissed softly, careful not to wake Alexandra. So what happens now? Elena asked. We have stabilized pack, implemented reforms, started family. What is next challenge? Now we keep building, Matthias said confidently. Keep improving, keep adapting, keep choosing each other and our pack every single day. That is what partnership means. Not finding perfect solution, but committing to continuous improvement together. I can absolutely do that. I know you can. That is why you are my Luna. Inside the festival grounds, celebration continued into evening. Music and laughter, community and connection. Hope for future built on foundation of past struggles overcome together. Stonehaven Pack was no longer dying. It was thriving, growing, becoming model for how packs could adapt to modern world while honoring traditions that mattered. All because two broken soldiers found each other, chose partnership over isolation, built something meaningful from ashes of what came before. Alpha and Luna, mates, parents, leaders, creating legacy of hope and possibility for generations to come. And that was the greatest triumph of all. The end.